this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit.
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapsed.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd. In 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
But here's the thing. Bachelor fans hated him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
That's when his life took a disturbing turn. A one-night stand would end in a courtroom.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, Robert Evans here, and I wanted to let you know this is a compilation episode. So every episode of the week that just happened is here in one convenient and with somewhat less ads package for you to listen to in a long stretch if you want. If you've been listening to the episodes every day this week, there's going to be nothing new here for you, but you can make your own decisions. Oh, It Could Happen Here, and by goodness, it continues to. I'm Robert Evans. Sophie, my producer, just noted to me that we should probably introduce Shireen Lana Yunus, since you've recently joined the team and have been on several episodes, and we just kind of rolled with it. Shireen, what are you? Who are you? Where are you? When are you?
Those are a lot of questions I can't answer.
They are. You are a frequent guest on guest. I hope not ghost on
That's
Behind the
actually
Bastards. You're a producer with iHeart. You're on the show Ethnically Ambiguous with Anna Hosnia, and you are our bud.
I am your bud.
Thank you.
Yeah. I joined
published
recently. Yes.
Published poet.
A filmmaker, a depressed person. You know, I tick all the boxes.
You helped Sophie bury that body the other year?
Yeah.
That was between us.
Yeah. I don't know why we need to put that on mic.
Between you and Lake Mead.
Okay. Well, everyone's going to know where that body is, so I appreciate that.
We're going to find it soon anyway.
But yeah, it's really fun to talk to y'all, so it's nice that we can record me doing it now for work.
Cool.
So is that a good intro?
Yeah.
That is a good intro.
We're really excited to have Shireen on our team. It's something that we've been hoping that would happen for a while now, and we just feel very fortunate to have her voice as part of our very tight-knit group. And you're welcome, listeners.
Yeah, well, motherfuckers.
I feel very honored to be a part of such a small, tight-knit group, especially because everyone, I'm not even saying this to fish, please, but everyone here is much smarter than me. And so I've been learning a lot, and I don't do nearly as much research as y'all do. So I hope to be the, like a someone representing the audience that knows nothing. You know what I mean? Like, that's my role here, is to really let people be seen who have their heads empty, like mine. So representation matters.
Well, I feel like we had empty-headed represented when I joined the team, but fair enough. Who are we today? What are we doing today? Where are we today? Chris, you're the president of this episode.
Oh no, wait, that's bad. All right, so I'm gonna. I think I have to assassinate myself. Is the way this works. But yeah, we're
legally.
Actually, yeah, I think next episode I assassinate myself. This episode I'd get unelected or something. But okay. Yeah, we're talking about sort of two convergent paths of how we got to like the most recent disaster with the most recent. Well, this isn't even the most recent disaster anymore, but how we got to the place where Roe v. Wade is about to die, and there's two threads. And tomorrow we'll be talking about the terrorism, but today we'll be talking. I say we, it's mostly Shireen, but yeah, we're going to be talking about how the sort of like half a century long electoral movement that got us to this place.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, I mean, some of it is self-explanatory and some of it isn't, but I think it's interesting to go back in time and really figure out how we got where we are. So I think it's pretty obvious that like Republicans use the abortion issue to forge coalitions with like right-wing and fundamentalist Christian voters, but Democrats are also using it to attract women voters. And it seems like neither party will risk modifying the rigid position that it has for fear of alienating those who the abortion issue has helped attract. Because it feels like it's this just, we're at a standstill, it's not solvable, but it's actually, when you look at the history, it's pretty, I don't know, it kind of makes sense how we landed here. And every presidential candidate or any candidate in general will present these countries' issues with like a sense of urgency, especially this issue. But it really feels like they're just using it to attract voters, and then it gets ignored. But how did abortion become a partisan issue in America? The polarization of the parties on this issue really started in the 1970s, and party leaders just started moving farther and farther apart on the issue. And a lot of scholars say that this is a combination of like grassroots activism and also just political strategy. So in the 1970s, the politicians' views on abortion didn't break down along neat party lines. Republican President Gerald Ford, he opposed Roe v. Wade, but the First Lady was an abortion rights supporter. And then his Vice President, Rockefeller, he presided over the repeal of abortion restrictions in New York. And in Congress, Republicans voted against abortion about the same rate as Democrats. So there wasn't a huge black and white, good, evil kind of thing going on. And it started to change in the 70s. So during his presidential campaign in 1972, Nixon began staking out anti-abortion positions as part of a strategy to appeal to Catholic voters and other social conservatives. And after he won with the majority of Catholic votes, Republican strategists began using the same tactics in Congress, and they were forging coalitions with evangelical groups around opposition to abortion. And it was really this larger effort to make the Republican Party painted as this like pro-family to help mobilize like socially conservative voters that really value this idea of this like traditional, in quotes, family. So it might have been both grassroots organizing, but I think both of these efforts really focused around this idea of this traditional, quote unquote, like Christian good family. And I think that's still a lot of the intention today is to really promote that, and why abortion is wrong is because it kind of goes against this idea of what a family should look like or how families should act like, in particular how a mother should act. So yeah, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely think we see that everywhere. That type of propaganda is, there obviously, and then they're in like the like, oh, this is like hidden in type thing. But yeah, I mean, Chris has talked about that quite a bit on certain things, so maybe Chris would be best to deep dive on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that have been like like are percolating around this time too, which is also like this is a period of like really intense feminist mobilization, and this is also a period where, you know, the one of the sort of rights driving issues had been integration, like opposing integration and like promoting segregation, and by this period they've basically lost that. And so they need like something, right? And like that something winds up being this vision of this sort of like very specifically white Christian patriarchal family. And I think it's also interesting that, like, you know, if you look at the initial abortion stuff is largely, it's like, okay, if the Republicans are targeting Catholics, right? And the reason they're targeting Catholics is because evangelicals in particular like haven't quite figured out what they think about this yet. And this kind of like family stuff and the I don't know, it ties into this whole sort of this attempt to get evangelicals into politics for the first time, or no, not for the first time, but they'd kind of been out of it for a while, like on this sort of like, well, the rapture's coming, so like what's the point of dealing with like this impure like secular sort of politics thing. And yeah, they get sort of roped back into it by the polarization of abortion, and by making like by making abortion in the family this incredibly sort of central part of what the Republican platform is, and by sort of like, you know, like attempting to destroy the kind of like more moderate like Rockefeller liberal wing of the Republican Party who just like get stomped and don't exist anymore.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think it's interesting because I feel like we see a lot of candidates go back and forth on the issues now, but it even started, I mean, it's been going on since forever because politics are all a scam. But Ronald Reagan really illustrates the shift because when he was a governor of California in 1967, he signed a law that loosened abortion restrictions. But in his 1980 presidential campaign, he called for the appointment of anti-abortion judges. So he's just just like any political candidate, he's going with the tides. He's trying to get elected. He's not really... No one has actual morals that they stand on. And only after 1988 does it show that more Democrats than Republicans were supporting access to abortion, because before then it was pretty much even, if not just a little bit.
It was mainly honestly split over whether or not you were fucking Catholic, right? Like that was the primary determining factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's an interesting thing there too, because a lot of, you know, because it's like the anti-abortion people see Reagan as like their guy, but then he gets into office and he's like not as strong on it as they wanted, and well, we'll get into some of what that leads to next episode. But there's
this was, I think, fundamentally, when you're looking at like the anti-abortion movement, it's a Christian nationalist power grab, and at that point, they had just figured out the strategy, so it was good enough that they were able to help get Reagan into office, but it was not consolidated enough that Reagan really felt the need to do much more than pay it lip service, you know?
Yeah. Well, just an example of everyone campaigning on something that they know will get them voted and then kind of ignoring it once they're in office because, like, it served its purpose.
I think there's another interesting thing that's going on here with that, too, which is that at this point, so... This is sort of the dawn of like Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority, and okay, if you want to hear me talk about this for a really long time, go listen to my episode on the Moonies and how Reverend Moon also was a huge part of this. But there's like this giant shift in like the technology of recruiting voters, where this is where you start getting mailing list organizing. This is where you start getting like, you know, enormous lists of people to call for fundraisers. This is where you start like, you know, this is where you start basically getting like the weird Facebook letter, like chain mail things that we have now, but like they would just like mail people like scare stories about like, here's like an actual baby that Planned Parenthood killed. And like that also.
That's what I was saying by like the obvious things propaganda wise. But yeah, I think that it's also like things on TV, things in movies.
Yeah.
That are like,
Yeah, they kind of try to pull at the heartstrings of some invisible heart they think people have. But
even like TV commercials, have things that like the traditional family that like
the nuclear white Christian family is like the default basic family, and anything that strays from that is abnormal. It's still the case now, honestly, I think.
Yeah,
like,
no.
Yeah, calls for diversity or like putting a black friend in the show still. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really,
I eventually I will do the entire rant that I have on this, but like this is a thing that like this is a powerful enough force that, like, for example, if you look at like every Asian American movie in the U.S., the entire plot of every Asian American movie is trying to repair is a family, like an Asian family trying to become the white Christian nuclear family, but having problems with it because they're having family issues that get resolved, and then having problems with it because they're Chinese.
Yeah.
And it's like it's this like warping sort of like like structural basis of society that like it's like a black hole that like it tears the fabric of reality and pulls everything else into it.
You know, I have the same gripe with a lot of just in general, like movies and TV shows about marginalized people, Middle Eastern people. It always seems like the crux of the problem is cultural and overcoming whatever issue the culture is having to disrupt this perfect white Christian life that is presented as the ideal. But going back to abortion.
You sorry?
No, don't apologize. I would love to rant about this with you on another episode.
You know what won't disrupt the white Christian hegemonic culture in the United States?
Capitalism?
The products. Well, actually, it eventually will, because the nature of extractive capitalism and endless growth will inevitably alter the world in ways that makes the lifestyles that those kind of people harken back to in their propaganda fundamentally untenable and impossible to exist on any kind of scale. But I don't know what my point was here. Here's some fucking ads. Oh, we're back.
We're back. Let's go to the late 80s, early 90s. So
the ladies.
Both Republicans and Democrats at this point, they were trying to appeal to the center for a while so they can remain as appealing to voters as possible. Mary Ziegler is a law professor at Florida State University who has studied the history of abortion and the abortion debate. And she wrote in the Washington Post that the 1990s and the early 2000s, for instance, many abortion opponents, they devoted their energy to supporting incremental restrictions like a ban on dilation or extraction, which is a technique for abortions later in pregnancy that opponents call partial birth abortion. And this restriction was eventually passed at the federal level in 2003 and is far less sweeping than the heartbeat bills that many Republican voters favor today, which ban abortions, as you know, at 6 weeks. But Democrats, meanwhile, they were somewhat like equivocal on the abortion debate during this time period. Bill Clinton, in his 1992 campaign, he famously said that abortions should be, quote, safe, legal, and rare. Hillary Clinton used the same language when she was running in 2008.
Yeah, like I feel like you still hear that too.
Yeah, you really do. It's like
just absolutely cowardly.
Yeah, like we support it, but also don't do it. Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah. And obviously, more recently, both sides of the abortion debate, they've come to seek broader change among abortion rights supporters. There's been an increasing awareness of reproductive justice, and this term was actually coined in 1994. And it describes an approach focused not just on the legal right to abortion, but on safe, affordable access to a range of reproductive health care, as well as the ability to parent children safely. And it was in the 90s that a lot of organizations started to be formed to help support this, to help abortion rights justice like kind of take form. Sister Song, which is the Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective, was formed in 1997, and it was by 16 organizations of women of color that formed these 4 mini communities. They were largely made up of Native American, African American, Latina, and Asian American communities, and they recognize that we have the right and responsibility to represent ourselves and our communities. And I think this is important to note only because I don't think women of color get enough credit for really like leading the fight to get reproductive rights. I feel like I can shit on white feminism all day, trust me. But especially when it comes to this, a lot of white women are like heralded as like, I don't know, these political heroes, when really most of the time with most issues when it comes to this, women of color are in the background doing most of the work. That's another episode. But Sister Song defines reproductive justice as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we do have in safe and sustainable communities. So it puts a lens on the emphasis of affordability of abortions, as well as on the legal status that it needs to have to even be safe and affordable. Because the right of abortion means very little when we can't afford healthcare that we need. And this is something that Kimberly Inez McGuire said. She's the executive director of Unite for Reproductive Gender Equity, called URGE. This is a rights group focused on young people. So there's a lot of things that emerged during this more recent time that came focused on more the justice aspect versus just the right to have it, because it doesn't do much if we have the right and yet it's still inaccessible. So in the last 5 years, reproductive justice activists have campaigned to repeal the Hyde Amendment, which was first passed in 1976, and it bars federal funding for most abortions. It restricts Medicaid coverage for abortions, and the amendment makes it difficult for many low-income Americans to pay for the procedure. The opponents of the Hyde Amendment have had some successes. In 2017 and 2019, Democrats in Congress introduced the EACH, E-A-C-H, Woman Act, which would repeal Hyde and allow Medicaid to cover abortions. But Democratic candidates have campaigned to repeal Hyde as well. During her presidential run in 2016, Hillary Clinton called for the repeal of Hyde, and the whole Democratic Party followed suit. Which is something that would have been unthinkable in the years when her and her husband were calling for abortion to be quote unquote rare. So things have progressed a little bit. Again, I think, unfortunately though, most of it is for following the trends versus actual morals, but that's my opinion. But on Hyde, it feels like what has changed in the last 5 years is that a community of people, led by young people, women of color, decided that the status quo was not good enough. So again, it's just people in the background doing most of the work. And at the same time, abortion rights activists have been working to reduce stigma around abortion and to present the procedure as a normal part of medical coverage. In 2017, in response to efforts to strip federal funding from Planned Parenthood, activists and ordinary people shared stories of their abortions under the hashtag Shout Your Abortion. So the left party, the Democratic Party, is definitely leaning now, obviously, to be abortion positive. But I also think it's definitely used as a way to attract voters more than anything else. And I mean, with our current president right now, we all know Biden has had a mixed record on abortion, which is a good representation of just how flip-floppy politicians can be. Because when he was in the Senate in 1973, he was a 30-year-old practicing Catholic who concluded that the Supreme Court went too far on abortion rights in the Roe case. He told an interviewer the following year that a woman shouldn't have the sole right and say to what should happen to her body. That's a quote. The sole right to say what should happen to her body. He doesn't think women should have that. And by the time he left the vice president's mansion in 2017, he was 74 years old, and he argued a far different view, that government doesn't have the right to tell other people that women can't control their body. Which is interesting because he not only was very vocal about being anti-abortion, but he used, in 1981, he crafted the Biden Amendment to ban the use of foreign aid for biomedical research related to abortion. So he was not only vocal about it, he actually tried to push it back. And he repeatedly voted for this Hyde Amendment that prohibited the use of federal funds for abortions, including Medicaid, as I said. And both of these policies remain in place today, despite efforts by Democrats to end the ban on the use of federal funds.
Here's one thought that I have.
Please.
And again, I continue to be an advocate, and don't take this the wrong way. We should learn from the right and how they made the progress they did with abortion. There are lessons there. And one of those lessons is that when you make something into the kind of issue that can get a politician elected, they will not actually pursue that issue if it's difficult, unless you create true believers and put them into politics, right? Reagan got elected in part on abortion. Reagan didn't really do much about it. Mm-hmm. It was diligent periods of time of not just like putting people in politics who believed in the cause, but also of applying brutal pressure to elected leaders over decades who didn't conform. And we don't have that kind of time with, like, let's say, climate change. But the same basic tactics need to be followed, which is you need to be vicious when your leaders, when the people you elect don't move on these issues. You need to be vicious and like a concerted and organized and like you need to come down on them like the hammer of fucking God, you know?
I think
like that's how you win.
But I think that's the biggest difference with Republicans and Democrats is that Democrats, unfortunately, are far more cowardly in voicing what they want. Even now, Biden is pro-abortion, quote unquote, but he hasn't even said the word abortion out loud ever. He's tweeted it once.
He tweeted
put it in a statement.
Shireen, it was in a tweet.
Fact that there's a website, there's a website that is called "Has Biden Said Abortion Yet?" and there's just a big no on it right now, obviously. But he has like cast this evolution of his views as a like wrestling with his teaching of his faith or whatever. But it's obviously more, it reflects a political calculation more than his views of fucking religion. And in 2015, for example, he said, "I'm prepared to accept that at the moment of conception, there's human life and being, but I'm not prepared to say that to other God-fearing, non-God-fearing people that have a different view."
What the fuck does that mean?
He's
nothing.
like, because he's a coward.
Nothing.
What the fuck does that
He's
mean?
He's a coward.
Joseph Robinette motherfucking Biden? What in the Christing fuck does that mean?
Yeah. He also has been quoted to say that this issue is the like the most difficult thing he's had to wrestle with as a Catholic kind of thing. He's definitely made it this like thing he needs to overcome or whatever the shit.
It's a religion, right? Sure. It's a religion, and your religion has been, at the very least, what I'll say about the Catholics is they did not adopt this as like a venal political strategy, which the evangelical right did. Like the Catholic Church has been consistent on this for a minute now. So I get why somebody who is legitimately a believing Catholic would have to struggle with this. But the way what you say, if you're actually not like a fucking, if you're not being a fucking goober about it, what you say is, hey, this is tough for me because of my faith, but this is the United States of America, and my faith does not dictate what other people get to do, and so I support the right to access to abortion. That's what you say.
Can you write the speeches, please? Can you do that? But no, I mean, I only want to bring that up because I just think the Democratic Party has conducted themselves in a really cowardly way when it comes to stuff like this, versus Republicans are so outright, even like volatilely trying to tell you how they feel. But yeah, that's that. Where do we go from here? I don't know. Yeah, the world is the world.
It certainly is, Shireen. And we'll be back tomorrow. Chris, what's our focus tomorrow?
Tomorrow we're gonna look at the other side of how they got abortion, other than like sort of running it as an electoral issue, which is they did an amount of terrorism that is so large that like most of the people talking about the terrorism missed most of the terrorism.
Yeah, it takes a minute to list. Speaking of terrorism,
that's the end of the podcast.
Here's ads.
Oh, yep. Ads.
I know. I just wanted to.
Sorry.
There is post-roll ads, but if you're listening to them, that's a choice.
Bless.
Hey, we always support people making the choice to listen to our wonderful advertisers, like the Washington State Highway Patrol, and lately Taser.
Oh.
And
yeah, they've been running. Look, we don't approve that. We're getting them removed, but it is funny.
Can I get a taser first, or is that not what that is?
I mean, Shireen, we can expense you a taser.
Oh shit! Great. I'll send a list of what I want.
Perfect.
Okay, bye.
2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom-loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd, and in 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. He became the first bachelor to ever have his final rose rejected. The internet turned on him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
But what happened to Clayton after the show made even bigger headlines. It began as a one-night stand and ended in a courtroom, with Clayton at the center of a very strange paternity scandal.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
Police search warrant.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. This is Love Trapped. This season, an epic battle of he said, she said, and the search for accountability in a sea of lies.
I have done nothing except get pregnant by the Bachelor!
Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It happened here. The thing that happened here was anti-abortion terrorism. Hi, I'm Christopher Wong. I'm hosting this. We're doing this really speedy. With me is Shireen, Robert, Garrison, and Sophie.
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Don't feel too speedy. This is an important issue.
Yeah,
is an important issue.
we're going through the intro so we can get to the to the content
meat.
faster.
Get to the meat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's get to the fucking meat. Let's get to the sandwich portion of the. I don't know what I'm doing here.
You're making
Let's talk about terrorism. We're talking about terrorism, Sophie. Your favorite thing.
Oh, God.
Chris, save the day.
So, okay, we've talked about sort of abortion as a legal issue, but running parallel to the sort of legal electoral campaign against abortion was a wave, a systemic campaign of terror that ranged from sort of individual personal humiliation and terrorization of individual women seeking abortion to like nail bombs and blowing abortion providers' heads off with shotguns. Yeah, so it's extremely bad, obviously, but I think there's a tendency among people who look at anti-abortion violence to sort of like isolate it from its historical context, which is that, okay, the American right has always ruled by terror from like literally its earliest extermination campaigns against indigenous people whose land they stole to, the sort of horrific psychological abuse and violence inflicted against slaves on their own plantation, who there's an entire history of like denying abortion people to slaves for numerous reasons. So, there's no reason really to expect that anti-abortion militants like wouldn't be violent. And I think it's worth noting that the tactics of the sort of militant wing of the anti-abortion movement, which are things like arson, bombings, and assassination, are these are the key tactics of the segregationist movement when they were fighting against integration. And lo and behold, like as abortion becomes the political glue for the right after they sort of, they sort of lose the fight over integration. They lose the ability to legally say like that you can't do integration, but a lot of the sort of de facto segregation like still exists. But yeah, like as they do that, like you still see, you see a new generation of sort of right-wing militants like taking the tactics of the old right-wing militants and using them to kill people, which is
bad.
Yeah.
For the record, yes, that is our official position.
Yeah.
Bad.
Wow.
Bad.
Way to be
We're taking a bold stance here.
radicals.
So I think we should start with someone who was not killing people, because I think it's useful to see the sort of like the arc of how this movement goes. So John O'Keefe was a Catholic anti-war protester. His thing was, so he's anti-abortion, right? But he wants to fuse like the anti-nuclear, anti-war movements with the anti-abortion movement, sort of in the wake of Roe v. Wade. And this doesn't work because the anti-war and the anti-nuclear movements are like driven by leftists and feminists, and they're like, no, like, fuck off. Like, we're not gonna, like, we want people to have abortions. So, but he still is like dead set that there should be this sort of like direct action against abortion clinics. And he managed to convince this like Quaker peace activist named Charles Fager to like teach the anti-abortion movement the sort of like techniques of like the civil rights movement and do like nonviolent civil disobedience. And so people like in the early 70s, like as Roe like is happening, people start like chaining themselves to abortion clinics. And, like, I think this is, if you've been around the left long enough, like, these are tactics I think you'd recognize, but these are very, very different campaigns than you're sort of, like, chaining yourself to a tree. Like, the biggest difference is, like, the extent to which the focus is just purely on terrorizing people. So I'm going to read a quote of, like, what these protests actually look like from the book Living in the Crosshairs, The Untold Stories of Anti-Abortion Terrorism. The protesters stand at the entrance to the clinic's parking lot and badger the patients when they come in. They get screamed at. The protesters write down their license plates. They send them cards. They make phone calls to their homes. Protesters also swarm clinics and harass the people who work there. Those window blinds, Christina, who's works at a clinic, explained while pointing at the huge windows that surround the conference table in one of her clients. You pull them down, you can look through them, and you could find the protesters at the windows looking in. And Krista, who's the person who's talking about this, like, she describes like the like these protesters would walk up to her and like say her kids' names, in order to get like the doctor into this clinic who's doing the abortions. Like, they have to smuggle him in. Like, he can't park in the parking lot because the abortion like protesters will get to him. So they have to like smuggle him in Krista's car. And like, even then people follow them constantly. Like the doctors and nurses have to like change their routes to work every day. They have these like decoys they have to use. And
for the record, I've gotten reports from folks who work for abortion access organizations saying they are now in multiple states using drones to follow people as they leave the clinic and get their license plate numbers.
Yeah, that makes sense. But like these people, like Krista, the person I was talking about, like she had to transfer her kids to a private school that like knew what her job was so that her kids wouldn't get harassed. And like we'll come back to this sort of quote unquote nonviolent stuff later, but like even in its sort of like nonviolent phase, this is a terror campaign. Mm-hmm. The goal of this is to terrorize everyone involved by stalking them, by intimidating them, by harassing them, to get them to not do abortions anymore.
Yeah, making patients or people that want abortions too afraid to get them, and people that provide them too afraid to provide them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, this doesn't really work in the 70s, and but by the time you hit the 80s, it starts to get really violent. In 1982, there's this guy named Don Benny Anderson and his two nephews, Matt and Wayne Moore, carry out the first anti-abortion, the first action of this right-wing anti-abortion. And also, they're like really anti-gay. Like they have a thing later on where they have this giant celebration for like the Saudis beheading 2 gay dudes or 3 gay dudes.
What?
Like they're horrible. Yeah, this network is called the Army of God. And
these guys.
Yeah, they're
these guys. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, they're this very, actually in some ways like they're a very sort of quintessentially modern terrorist organization in that like they don't have like a command structure. It's not even so much centralized cells. It's just like people just sort of can freely affiliate to it and like use this name to carry out attacks. And the first one of these is it's this guy, Donnie Benny Anderson. He kidnaps Dr. Hector Zavalos and his wife Jean, and originally like their plan is to kill them. Don Benny Anderson, like what he writes about it is that he has been talking to God and he has been talking to the Archangel Michael, and they have commanded him to go and kill this person.
God.
And eventually, like, negotiators fortunately are able to like talk them down, and like the doctor makes this like tells them like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do abortions anymore, and they let them go. But yeah, I think like it is important to note that like among people who are like this hardcore, I mean, and this isn't, you know, and I say like there are a lot of people who are more moderate than this. Like the whole sort of talking to God thing, like that is not uncommon.
No, that is like very common.
No, these are all people who in their churches will like say a bunch of gibberish words and tell each other that they're speaking in like the secret language of God that God has like put into their brains.
Speaking in tongues.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, and I think like there's some tendency to like I've seen people try to write this off as people who are mentally ill, and it's like no. These are just
they're
Christians.
not mentally ill. They just believe in a different world than you do.
Yeah,
and they're willing to use violence to make their world real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the letter that they write, like while they're holding these people captive, says, quote, "Those who truly love God would kill the baby killers." Wow. And it turned out later that they've been funding their activities by robbing abortion clinics. And actually, that's the thing that doesn't. That I don't think I've ever seen any of the like I don't think this doesn't get included in like the list of terrorist things people do against abortion clinics, but they get robbed a lot. Like there's like a lot of these militants are just robbing abortion clinics to fund their stuff. And this is
again like the thing you have to keep in mind when you're trying to analyze it, like if you literally believe the things that these people literally believe, this is the only moral thing to do.
Yeah.
If there were, just try and like get in their heads, if there were an organization literally murdering babies every single day, this would be the right thing to do. That's like, you have to actually, like, they're not crazy. They fundamentally exist in a world that is as different from the one you live in as the world in a fucking Marvel comic. Like, it's just another reality that they exist within.
Yeah, and like you get sort of like I don't know, you call it like people who are trying to play the centrist angle, who are like, oh, like people on the left don't understand that it's like it's not about autonomy for them. They literally believe they're killing babies. And it's like that doesn't like no, but the fact that they literally believe that abortion is killing children, the only thing that does is make them more fanatical and more militant. And it's like, yeah, like I used to sort of believe, like I used to believe that like, oh, like people don't understand that they really think they're killing babies thing. And then I went to college and I like started reading about the history of genocides, and I started reading about like what how common it is for people who commit genocides to literally believe that if they don't do this genocide, that the people they're genociding are going to kill them. And it was like, no, that just makes you more likely to do violence. Like, it's... And yeah, you know, this goes exactly how to expect. In fact, and this is one of the other things that they're very effective about, which is each attack like radicalizes more people to start doing attacks. So remember John O'Keefe, the guy who was doing the nonviolence stuff, like he starts questioning whether nonviolence is like the right tactic. And he never like bombs anything, but he like stops condemning violence in public. And this goes really, really, really badly, really quickly. The Army of God publishes this, like, it's initially a very clandestine thing, but they publish this manual about how to attack abortion clinics.
My God.
That has stuff from like pouring concrete over heating pipes, how to make bombs. They have this thing that the anti-abortion people do a lot, which is pouring bucolic acid, which smells like it is the thing that makes vomit smell bad. Like you can smell like 2 parts per 10 million. Like of this thing, like in a room, and they'll take like a syringe and they'll inject it into a facility, and like 1 drop of this stuff is enough that like you can smell it like months later. There's no way to like easily clean it, and eventually like they're pouring gallons of this stuff like into abortion clinics,
into the ventilation system.
Yeah, it's
there are more than 100 of these attacks to date too. Like they've done this a lot.
Yeah. By 1984, this whole thing goes into overdrive. I'm going to read a quote from the book Armed for Life, The Army of God and Anti-Abortion Terror in the United States. The National Abortion Federation identifies 30 incidents of arson or bombing in 1984, exceeding the previous 7 years combined. The series of bombings included, but was not limited to, the offices of the National Abortion Fund and the American Civil Liberties Union in Washington, D.C., as well as abortion clinics in Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. The signature of the Army of God was also found at a subsequent clinic bombing in Saratoga, Florida. One of the other things that they do that is great is so they have a declaration of war that the Army of God sends. They also like specifically send a death threat to Harry Blackmun, who was the guy who wrote the Supreme Court justice who wrote Roe v. Wade. Which is like, you know, this is a fun thing if you've been with like the whole discourse cycle about, oh, we shouldn't protest at these houses. Like, yeah, man, a terrorist group like threatened to kill the justice who wrote this thing. Like, and that guy, the guy who wrote that eventually carried out like this enormous bombing campaign where he started strapping like 20-pound like liquid propane tanks to gunpowder bombs and blowing up clinics with them. And this stuff spreads like wildfire. People start using the Army of God's bomb recipes to attack clinics in other ways. Like, yeah, we've talked about sort of like the other campaign stuff that they use. And this starts to like a lot of the people who wind up in the full on terrorism stuff were like people who used to be like nonviolent protesters. So, Shelley Shannon, who'd previously been like a nonviolent protester, like goes violent in 1992 and starts doing these like butyric acid attacks, and then she graduates to arson. She attacks 7 clinics, offices, and health centers. And these aren't like when I say attacks, like this isn't like they threw a Molotov at it. Like she is making napalm and like detonating napalm bombs like inside of these clinics. It is.
Do they even care if people are inside, or they just do it?
It's weird. Initially, they're targeting empty buildings, but they're like working themselves up to it. And like they start to be you could read this in their writing, like they're working themselves up to a point where they're like, well, okay, if there was a person in this building, we don't really care.
They deserve it.
And yeah, and by 1992, the Army of God, like specifically in its manual, like as justification for killing people. Oh. And lo and behold, 1 year later, after this is one of the other strategies they use a lot.
What was their justification?
They're killing. It's like, well, they're killing babies, and they have a bunch of Bible verses that they cite, and they're like, now we can kill people because they're killing babies.
Tight. Wow.
It's great.
That's truly like in writing too. Horrifying.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and like literally the next year in 1993, there's all these. They start doing this thing where they put wanted posters with like an abortion doctor's name in them, like like literally like stuff out of like a bad old West movie. Or they'll have like their name and like where they live and like that fact that they're a doctor and say they kill babies. And so, you know, in 1992, 1993, these posters go up for this doctor named Dr. David Gunn. And he's one day walking back to his car when he gets shot 3 times in the back by Michael Griffin, and he dies. And he is the first, that David Gunn is the first abortion provider to be killed. And he is not going to be the last.
He is not the last.
Yeah. So this immediately, and you know, the moment someone does it, it opens the floodgates, and suddenly everyone is doing it. And so, you know, this makes people like Shelley Shannon, who we talked about, like setting off napalm bombs, who until this point has only like bombed empty buildings. Like she starts like considering killing people, and a few months later, she shoots Dr. George Tiller. And if you're thinking to yourself, hold on, wait, I thought Dr. George Tiller was killed in 2009 and not 1993. You are right. Shelley's assassination attempt, like she shot him like in both arms, but he survived to be murdered a decade and a half later. Wow. Meanwhile, there's this guy named Paul Hill, who's just like abortion clinic like protester, right? He emerges in like the national media scene because he's like the guy who will go on TV and defend Michael Griffin killing a doctor. Wow. And they just let him do this. He does the whole fucking talk show circuit. They just let him do this to defend. Yeah, on live TV. He's on all of the mainstream networks to defend killing abortion doctors. Wow. And he does it again with Shelley Shannon's attempt to kill George Tiller. And a year later, Paul Hill walked up to Dr. Joe Britton and blew his head off with a shotgun. Wounds his wife, turns around, and then killed an abortion clinic escort named James Barrett. Like, they had this guy on TV fucking every night saying that saying that killing abortion doctors is justified, and then he blew an abortion doctor's head off with a shotgun the next year.
Wow.
And yet I don't think I'm what's exciting is that I'm sure that when there are more attacks by pro-choice oriented people, at no point will anyone get brought on a TV network to say anything but ask that cops get more money to crack down on them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like just the media asymmetry here is awful. And we're going to talk about this more in a bit because it gets even worse. So that same year in 1994, there's a gunman named John Scally III who walks into a building and murders Shannon Loney, who's a social worker and anti-abortion. Like she's an anti-abortion and an anti-child abuse advocate who's working at Planned Parenthood, and he just walks in and shoots her. He shoots at a bunch of the doctors and the patients, and luckily they all survive. But then he goes to another clinic and he kills social worker Leanne Nichols, who was like working at the front desk there. And he's eventually arrested. He gets away with both of these ones, but then he goes and tries to shoot up a third clinic, and that one finally, like, he gets arrested for. But like, and the other thing is like the third clinic that he shoots at, like that's a clinic that had already been bombed. This is a clinic that there have been protests at for years, and he's, you know, he goes there and he shoots at these people, and he kills 2 more people. And wow. Yeah, and it's, you know, and they just like keep doing this. And one of the sort of incredibly grotesque things is that, like, okay, so the Army of God has this, they have a website, right? And their website has these things that they call like the Prisoners of Christ, who are like people who are like, it's like prisoners of conscience, but like Christ, who they like celebrate and they like raise funds for. And one of the ways they do this is they have this thing called the White Rose Banquet, which is like one of the most offensive names I've ever seen for an organization. It's named after the White Rose Society, which is this like Christian anti-Nazi like nonviolent resistance group whose like leaders were all killed by Hitler for opposing Hitler. And their thing is like, well, okay, so the abortion is the new Holocaust. And so, you know, they have this banquet that's like in support of these terrorists. And they at the first one of these in 1996, they released this thing called the Nuremberg File Project, which was this like, it was this archive of like abortion providers. It has like their names, it has their addresses, it has photos, it has their phone numbers. They target like and it's not just like doctors, right? They target clinic staff, they target security guards, target anyone who's around there, and they have like these like lists of different categories of people. So if you're still alive, your name will be in like bolded black. If you've been wounded, your name will be grayed out, and then if you die, there's like if you get killed or you die, there's a strike through it. So this is a kill list they've assembled, and this is just like going around the internet. There's enormous numbers of people who like providers who are put on this. And they also like the White Rose Society, like at this banquet, they start putting out wanted posters with like $1,000 rewards for closing a clinic and $500 for like convincing a doctor to stop giving abortions. And because these people are just like I cannot emphasize this enough, like literal monsters. In 1998, they auction off the gun that Shelley Shannon used to kill George Tiller.
Wow.
As like a fundraising thing.
So
yeah, and there's a number of things you should think about that. One of them is the fact that the local police department absolutely had to be involved in that, because normally murder weapons don't go back to anyone, that they're destroyed, which means the police were like, yeah, we absolutely want you guys to be able to auction this gun off.
Wow. That's a very good point to bring
cool
up.
stuff.
The fear tactics, they would be, like, of course they would work. If your name is on this list and you have a family and you know what I mean, like, God, I'm mad.
Yeah,
I'm mad.
yeah. I will say there is an interesting thing with this where like a lot of people who like get targeted by this stuff, like it just pisses them off and they get even more committed to it, which is like incredibly rad, but also like Jesus Christ, they have these abortion provider kill lists and people on this list get killed. And it's
and encouraged, like people are encouraging to kill them,
and like they do this in the open. Like there are like literally like Christian radio stations will like they'll do this thing where like they'll start listing like by name and the addresses of like where the abortion providers near them are, and then start talking about the biblical verses that justify killing them, and then they will literally say on the radio, "Go kill this person," and they could just do this. No one stopped them ever. They just got away with this for decades and decades. So one of the other, I think this bombing is famous, but I don't think the reason why it happened is famous. So there's a guy named Eric Rudolph.
Oh yeah, I was wondering when you were going to talk about Rudolph.
Yeah. So that's right now. So Eric Rudolph is most famous for nail bombing the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. He
sure did.
Yeah, he put a bunch of
injuring
bombs.
hundreds of people.
Yeah, he injures over 100 people. He kills one.
Killed one. Yeah, it was
former special forces guy, right?
Yep.
Green Beret, wasn't he?
Yeah. And he says that his commander in the 327th Air Assault Regiment taught him how to make bombs, like out of like scrap stuff. So he like, yeah. So he does it in 1996. He doesn't get caught. Right, this guy detonated a nail bomb at the fucking Olympics,
and then a year later,
don't worry, we're gonna a year later this twice. The next year, he sets off a bunch of bombs he sets off a bomb at an abortion clinic, and this is like this is a double tap bomb. There is a bomb in a trash can behind that's designed to kill the first responders. This injures 7 people.
Yeah, and then it injures 7, and it kills a police officer. Actually,
does it? Oh, I didn't see that. But yeah, it kills a police officer. Yeah, and then like the next one, he bombs an Atlanta nightclub and wounds 6 people. Oh no, sorry.
Specifically,
he does this twice.
A gay bar.
Yeah, he bombs a gay bar. And that one, he also like in the adjacent parking lot, because again he was trying to kill the first responders. That the police find a bomb and defuse it before it can go off. And again, they still don't get this guy.
Not until 2003.
Yeah, the next year, he bombs another abortion clinic with a nail bomb. And this time he kills a security guard named Robert Sanderson and like permanently injures a nurse named Emily Leons, who was left like half blind and like permanently maimed by the fact that again he set off a fucking nail bomb.
He was not caught. He was not caught for a while.
Yeah. And I want to stop here and talk about like how the bombing stuff is carried in the media, right? As best I could tell, and I went and looked for this, no anarchist has killed someone with a bomb in the U.S. for 100 years. Like Karl Marx was closer to seeing the moon landing than a baby born today is of seeing an anarchist kill someone in the U.S. with a bomb. And yet, anarchism everywhere is so constantly associated with bombings. Meanwhile, the anti-abortion freaks they bombed the 96 Olympics with a nail bomb.
And when he was in his trial, he released a manifesto talking about how deadly force is justified against people who operate abortion clinics. He talks about a whole bunch of anti-gay stuff, a whole bunch of anti-abortion stuff. Like, and he's given the mic like on his trial, just used to like read his manifesto.
Yeah, they just let him read his manifesto.
It's pretty wild.
Wow. Where are all the pro-life activists when it comes to taking life? That's interesting.
Well, but but that's the thing though. They're all in favor of like
the lives of the
they
babies.
See it,
they think
yeah, they're arguing
killed.
that it's self-defense or it's defense of these babies.
I mean, I'm not
like,
the most well
defense of those who can't defend themselves. Is
exactly
what they'll talk about. Yeah,
it is entirely within them, the moral universe within they operate. It is entirely consistent. It's one of those things. Whenever like liberals will be like, why don't they do this or why don't they do that? That's not pro-life. And it's like, well, because the word doesn't mean the same thing to you that it does to them.
Fair.
Well, and the guys doing this terror, because like you will occasionally, like you'll get some, I mean, some of the pro-life people oppose this because they think it's bad optics, right? But apparently it's not bad optics because again, like who are the people who get fucking remembered as bombers? Like, and I want to read a quote from the FBI. This is from the book Armed for Life. In 1984, the year with the highest abortion clinic bombings to date, FBI Director William Webster went on television and informed the public, quote, "Bombing a bank or a post office is terrorism. Bombing an abortion clinic is not an act of terrorism because the objective is social and anti-abortion violence, and I don't believe it currently meets our definition of terrorism." Reagan called the anti-abortion
nonsense.
It's worse. Okay, Reagan called the bombings, the abortion clinic bombings, quote, anarchist activities. Like they are blowing up abortion clinics, and we're still getting fucking blamed for it. Like, Jesus Christ.
I don't know a lot about anything, so a lot of this is news to me, which is wild that I'm hearing about a lot of this for the first time. How have I not known about this?
They bombed the Olympics and no one talks about it.
Wow.
Like, I was just losing my mind the whole time. And like
it's bad and it's still happening. It's not. It's just like 3 people were killed and 9 people were injured in an attack on a Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado back in 2015.
Yep.
There's been over at least 11 murders tied to anti-abortion like action, I guess. 26 attempted murders, at least 42 bombings, 200 arsons, and then thousands and thousands of more like assaults and random incidents.
We should also point out here when we're talking about the murder counts, the murder count is lower than it actually is because the murder count doesn't count the people who specifically the Americans who went to Canada to shoot abortion doctors and the Americans who went to Australia to shoot abortion doctors, both of which happened.
And threats against abortion providers have increased exponentially. Just since 2010, like they have more than quadrupled. Like it's
constant.
It's been escalating at such a rate that every year's data is insufficient for talking about the current period. Like you can't even talk about it because all of the data is so inaccurate now. That's how fast this stuff is accelerating.
And there's a few other things that like we should mention when we talk about the statistics. One of the reason the death toll is like quote unquote only 11 is because bomb making is really hard and a lot of these bombs don't go off. So for example, in Canada, a worker at a clinic discovered a bomb with 2 pounds of nails in it that quote had a destructive capability of 100 feet. And also like I should point this out. Like okay, so like they there's a lot of abortion doctors who are killed like outside of their clinics, but also. There's a guy named James Kopp who shot like 4 doctors and he shot them like in their homes, like with an SKS, like in their homes through their windows. And he killed Dr. Barrett Slepian in the 90s. They keep doing stuff like this. Like in 2001, I don't know if I wonder how many people actually remember this. There was this huge anthrax scare. Well, it wasn't an anthrax scare. Like people were like there were anthrax attacks. People were like mailing people letters with anthrax in it.
Yeah.
And so right as this is happening, a guy named Clay Wagner sends 800 letters signed by the Army of God with fake anthrax to Planned Parenthood clinics in 17 states. And these anthrax packets, like it's not just like flour, right? These anthrax packets have BT in it, which is a pesticide that is so similar to anthrax that the package just tested positive. And so all of these people, these 800 clinics who opened these letters, like thought they were going to die because they opened a letter. There was white powder in it. It said it was anthrax, and then it tested positive for anthrax. And like to this day, a bunch of abortion clinics like have when they open their mail, they have like a special room that is like sealed off, so that if they open the mail and they open a chemical weapon, only the person reading the mail will die.
Wow,
great! That's the sign of a good system.
Yeah. They also, a lot of Planned Parenthoods have something kind of similar set up with the receptionist, where basically the way it's set up is that if there's a mass shooter, the receptionist can like seal off everyone but them.
Yeah.
Like it's like a thing that you know you're getting into if you're in a plant, if you're in that gig. Is like someone might come in and I might have to die to try and stop them from getting to everyone else.
It's bad. I mean, just from 2019 to 2020, there was a 125% increase in reports of assaults and batteries inside and outside clinics. There was double the amount of death threats from 2019 to 2020, and things have not gotten better since 2020. So we're just waiting for all that new data to come in because, oh boy.
Yeah, and I think there's another thing we need to keep in mind with this data is that there's so much stuff that doesn't get reported. All of those numbers are low. Every single one of them is enormously low. And there's a bunch of other stuff that these people do that just never gets talked about. So I think before we get into that, I do want to talk about the most famous abortion provider who got murdered, which is Dr. George Tiller, who is like a genuinely incredibly heroic figure who
keep doing it after the first time you were shot. Like you would be a hero if you did it up until you got shot.
Yeah,
but to keep going after.
Yeah, like he got shot. His clinic got bombed. There was an entire his clinic got bombed. What was the other one? Yeah, he was one of the, I think he was. Actually, I don't know if it was that anthrax threat or like a different anthrax threat, but like people like he kept getting anthrax threats. There was this thing called Operation Rescue, which is, I guess there's still versions of this around, but they're these like they do these like giant like nonviolent civil disobedience campaigns where like thousands of people will show up to a place and they'll like chain themselves to the buildings and they'll like prevent anyone from getting in and they'll like terrorize everyone around there. And his office is one of the ones that was targeted in 1991, which is like in their like they had this big campaign called Operation Rescue. It was targeting like him specifically. And there is one fun story in this, which is they tried this in Minneapolis in 1993, but they got their asses kicked by a bunch of anarchists and had to all run away, which was extremely funny. But yeah, like I'm the other thing that's important with Tiller specifically is the extent to which the right wing media is like culpable in this. Like Tiller, like Bill O'Reilly specifically is constantly yelling about Tiller. He calls Tiller the baby killer. He accuses him of running operating a death mill, executing babies about to be born, and destroying fetuses for just about any reason right up until birth date. He one of his rants, he literally says like right before, well, not right before, but like pretty close to when Tiller gets assassinated, quote, "If I could get my hands on Tiller, well, can't be vigilantes, can't do that. It's just a figure of speech. But despicable? Oh my God, it doesn't get worse. Does it get worse? No."
Wow.
So he's just like, this is just like the shit that he's being subjected to by the media. And then, oh, lo and behold, he gets murdered.
You know what doesn't?
I
don't know. I have nothing to say.
You know what doesn't do a coordinated.
You know what would be dope? Here's what I'll say. You know what would be dope? If when somebody came to shoot George Tiller, that person had gotten shot repeatedly. That would have been cool.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been neat. But anyway, here's ads.
And we're back with more horrifying stuff. Yeah, so there's a lot of focus, I think, there's been a lot of media coverage recently about this just because, like, as a reaction to the incredibly bad faith, like, oh, look at the sanctity of people protesting at the Supreme Court. It's like they blew people's heads off with shotguns. But, and like that's good, and I'm really glad there's more media reporting about this. But I want to talk about, there's an incredible focus here on the shootings and bombings, and like there's good reason for that. But I want to talk about some other shit that the forced birth fanatics do because it's horrifying. It doesn't get talked enough. So one of the people who gets interviewed in Living in the Crosshairs, which is a great book, by the way, it's about, I don't agree with all of its policy recommendations, but it's a book like interviewing abortion providers about their experiences. One of the people they interview is this guy named Rodney Smith, who's an abortion doctor. And I'm just going to read the stuff that they do to this guy because it's, okay, so protesters show up to his son's wedding. They burn his house and his farm down. They burn
Jesus
17
Christ.
horses to death. They kill their dog, their cat, and all of their possessions.
Wow.
From the book.
How do
Living in
the
the
horses
Crosshair.
help kill babies? Can you tell me that? And the cats and the dogs?
Yeah, we will.
God,
we'll
imagine
get to that.
if an anarchist group did this.
Yeah,
everyone would lose their minds.
I'm gonna read a quote about this from this book. Someone mailed a letter postmarked the morning of the fire, justifying killing the animals on Rodney's farm because Rodney, quote, murdered little children. However, the letter was untraceable.
Wow.
They do this shit all the fucking time, and it never gets reported. And the reason it never gets reported is because when the city comes to investigate, they fucking destroyed the entire scene of the crime. They destroyed the entire scene of the crime so thoroughly that when the fire marshal showed up the day after, they tried to arrest Rodney Smith for evidence tampering because they thought that he had done it.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense.
Wow.
And lest you think this is the end of the shit that this guy goes through, right? Like when they find out he's like going to like a conference, or like they find out he's staying in a hotel, they do these campaigns where like they'll do these mass call-ins to the hotel saying, hey, there's this person here, and if you don't kick them out, like we're gonna protest at all your branches. So he gets kicked out of hotels. He gets attacked by an anti-abortion protester in the chambers of the Supreme Court. Like that Supreme Court, the big one.
How did they even get the chambers of the Supreme Court?
He was just one of the people who was showing up at this thing, and the guy like throws him out of his chair, like grabs him, throws him out of his chair, picks up the chair, and starts beating the shit out of him with his own chair. This is in the chambers of the Supreme Court. They beat an abortion doctor with his own chair, and Rodney had security with him, right? Because when you're an abortion doctor and people are this targeted at you, you have security so you don't get attacked like this. But the court wouldn't let him like bring his private security inside. And their rationalization was he had been assured that, quote, nothing ever happens in the Supreme Court.
Wow.
And the thing about this, right? You cannot find a news article about this, right? A guy got beat up by these people in the Supreme Court. If literally anyone who was not a fucking forced birth anti-abortion fanatic did this, there would have been a news cycle that would have lasted until the fucking end of time.
There would have been a movie and 3 shows made about it.
Yeah, and there's just nothing.
Wow.
That is wild. Like that is really showing. Like these things aren't big problems, right? Because they aren't challenging to any kind of power structure. So they're allowed to happen because they're just reinforcing things. They're not actually challenging things. But still, it's very brazen when you're killing like 17 horses and going into the Supreme Court to beat someone with a chair. You would think that someone would say something. And I've never heard of this before.
No. Yeah, me either.
This guy
is like right up your alley, Garrett.
I know, this is like
the thing I want to emphasize about this is the things they did to one guy, right?
Yeah.
One doctor. This is happening. This stuff, this kind of stuff, is happening to people every fucking day across the country, and there is nothing. There is jack shit. You might maybe see a report in the local papers, like maybe. It is just an incredible campaign of terror. But this guy is like, he is staggeringly based. There's this quote from that book again. Rodney is used to this type of verbal abuse and sometimes reacts in kind. When a priest called him a murderer, Rodney responded by calling the priest a child molester. When the protesters told Rodney they were praying for him, he responded, "No, you're preying upon us. There's a difference." So he rules, and he'd been a doctor who like did other stuff. And when the abortion people, I think it was after they burned his house down, he was like, "No, fuck you. I'm only going to do abortions now."
Wow.
He is like staggeringly based.
Wow.
He rules. Like, yeah, which I guess also like this is a thing that like, so like obviously. Like, I don't think any leftist has ever fucking lit people's horses on fire.
Not that I know of.
Like,
generally, they would have more of an instinct to free the horses.
Yeah, like that.
Which
like,
is still,
you have to be like genuinely monstrous to light horses on fire. Like they scream, like horses scream, like when you light them on fire. It's
and cats and dogs.
Yeah,
animal abuse and animal murder by itself is like pretty justifying it by saying it's because they were on the property of someone who helps gives abortions is some wild thinking. Well, None of those words are in the Bible. Actually, there is a lot of animal murder in the Bible.
That's true.
Never mind.
They do kill a lot of people in the Bible too.
They kill a lot of people and animals. Yeah. Okay. Well.
Yeah. But I mean, I will say that there is a thing that can happen where if like sometimes targeted protests on a person just like makes them reinforce, like dig into their beliefs, and that
sometimes,
can happen.
Yeah.
And I think like here, I think like there's a lot of people who are just stunningly brave, who go through this shit and just still keep doing it because like this is something that they believe in. And you know, and those aren't even like that extreme examples of like the kind of stuff that happens. Again, we've talked about like, again, nail bombs, right? Like people getting their heads blown off with shotguns. There is a systemic campaign of terror that is felt incredibly acutely by the people who need these services, who need to get abortions, who need to get reproductive health care, and is felt by the providers of that health care. And nobody else in society sees about it or talks about it. And they have, you know, okay, so I'm going to read another quote from Living in the Crosshairs about the tactics that these groups use, because they have so many things. These tactics include bombings, arson, anthrax scares, and mass blockades. Extremists have also thrown butyric acid into clinics, glued clinic locks shut, locked themselves to clinic property using items such as bicycle locks or chains, drilled holes into clinic roofs so that clinics flood, invaded clinics, vandalized clinics, made threatening phone calls, tried to persuade patients to go to fake clinics, which we've talked about that in our episode on crisis pregnancy centers. But that is also like part of the systemic campaign of terror, is deceiving and humiliating people into not getting abortions. They put spikes on driveways. They'll stand. This is a very common thing, is they'll stand outside of abortion clinics talking about how they're going to make bombs and like the chemicals that they're mixing. And they'll lay down on sidewalks in front of buildings. They will jump on people's cars. They will camp out in front of clinics for like multiple day stretches. They send decoy patients like into the clinics to disrupt it.
It's just so much.
Yeah. And like the brazenness with like, again, like if there are things on there, like, so like I don't want to like make this point too much, because like, yeah, you can get away with a lot of stuff, right? Even if the state is hunting for you, there's a lot of stuff that you could do that you can get away with. But like the level of stuff they've been able to get away with, like the fact that they've been able to literally on the air say that you should murder a specific abortion doctor, mention them by name, and the fact that I know people who have had the FBI show up to their doors because of jokes they made on Twitter. It is fucking appalling.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, the law doesn't exist. The law doesn't matter. It's all about who's actually challenging systems of power.
Yeah, and the police are like, again, this is, well, one of they literally do cross burnings, like fucking like they literally do clan style fucking cross burning. So I can once again go back to the old Rage Against the Machine classic. Some of those who work forces are the same who burn crosses, because it is literally the same people. The cops will cooperate with them. Like, there's the other thing they do a lot is they'll just like shoot bullets through the windows of clinics.
Yeah, that is
they do
super
constantly,
common.
and they never get caught.
Yeah, no one cares. That is very common.
Yeah, and like fire bombs happen to this day. One of the incidents they talked about in that book was so this is stuff that happened at like one clinic. They set the clinic's fence on fire in the middle of the night. They plugged the downspouts on like the roof after like a giant snowstorm, so that like when the snow melted, the water like poured into this hole they drilled and it flooded the entire clinic. They had another one where they drilled holes in the ceiling of the clinic and ran a garden hose through it and flooded the entire building. And yeah, again, like, and none of this stuff ever makes the news. Like, well, and you can compare the reaction to this to like how they reacted to the Animal Liberation Front, right?
Yeah,
like, the
Animal Liberation Front,
absolutely. Like, that caused, there are law enforcement like techniques. There are law enforcement organizations that exist today specifically to stop people like that exist today specifically because of this campaign to stop the Animal Liberation Front for freeing animals. Like, these people, and you know, and I should say this, like, also, like, there's this whole push to, like, oh, we need to call these people terrorists, and like, yeah, like Bill Clinton called these people terrorists, and like, what happened? Nothing. Like, they got one law that was like fine, that was about trying to keep people from protesting right outside a clinic, but that got struck down by the Supreme Court because, again, we live in a society that is constantly moving towards theocratic fascism.
if you torch construction sites or sedans or people wanting to destroy sections of forest, then you're a terrorist. If you send out mail bombs and kill a whole bunch of horses, you're just some dudes, I guess.
Yeah, and one of the things that's incredibly frustrating about the story is there'll be people who are being stalked, right? Or they're being harassed, like they're being intimidated. These people keep showing up. They'll call the FBI, and the FBI will go, yeah, we don't care. And then the next day they'll get shot by the same person.
Well,
this happens multiple times with multiple, and like both, we talked about this with the person who killed Tiller. A lot of the people who do these anti-abortion murders, like, were just irregular anti-abortion prisoners and like protesters. And like the other thing that happens a lot is like people will go to jail for an abortion bombing, they'll come out and they'll do it again. And it's like,
you know, one of the really scary things about this as well. I know this has been stated before. This isn't by any means a new thought or framing, but with all of the laws getting enacted around the whole like bounty hunter side of things for like how there's going to be, you know, citizens being deputized to track down both abortion providers and people who sought out abortion. It's giving all of this train of thought, like all of this driving ideology, it's deputizing it and it's giving it actual legal backing. So it's no longer just ignored by law enforcement. It is now being encouraged by local governments. And all of these same motivations are now like you can get rewarded for doing this. And oh boy, will people seize on that opportunity?
Yeah, and I think that there's a thing we can talk about with fascism here, where it's like, okay, so like what is fascism? And if you're looking at like one of the things that like if you're using like a strict classical definition of fascism is the integration of like party sort of like party paramilitary forces into the state. And this is what we're looking at, is we're looking at these people who have been fucking bombing abortion clinics for 50 years, like starting to do this stuff. And I think like, I'm going to read another passage about the kinds of stuff they do to individual people, because like, I think, you know, I mean, I keep going back to just like, here's the high level terror that they're doing, but like, yeah, like the individual people, after being verbally targeted at her clinic for years, protesters started harassing Tammy Madison through various written communications. First, the protesters distributed flyers throughout Tammy's neighborhood, including one at Tammy's door. The flyer listed Tammy's address, the make and model of Tammy's car, and listed a telephone number purported to be Tammy's number. Then, the protesters appeared at her home with signs displaying her name that said she kills babies and hires the baby killers. When they were outside Tammy's house, they handed out flyers about her to anyone walking by. They do things like they'll use like licenses, for example, because again, you have to get licenses, right, to provide abortions, to be a doctor. And so they use licenses to find personal information about people. The people out there are like, I mean, they're right wingers, right? So they're really racist. They like, they love screaming Jew doctor at people because like they racial slurs. They constantly out people. Like
the nail bomb guy also attacked a gay bar. So there's a lot of crossover in terms of who they want to attack.
Yeah, and like they do constant death threats. There's also a thing I want to talk a bit about, which is like these malicious legal lawsuits. So one of the ways that people go after like clinics is that they're like clinics are like constantly under legal threat. People are constantly suing them. People are suing them just to find out personal information about them because the court will give you information. They have like these fake case inspectors who will come in order to infiltrate the things. Like there's enormous legal pressure from the state itself, which is often trying to destroy these clinics. They'll pass laws specifically to make it so the clinics can't operate in various ways. Like people who are just like district attorneys will do investigations into them over and over again. They go after like the kids of providers constantly. I read a story from this book that again, like no one ever talks about. Like they kidnapped this provider's child, like her like 12-year-old child, like at a clinic, and like tried to indoctrinate them, and then eventually gave them back after a few hours. But like again, like they kidnapped a child of one of the people who works at these things, and no one even talks about it. Like there's never anything. I don't know. Like I just. Like the more you go into this, is like the more stuff that you see that like Like they target people's parents to like show up at like the nursing homes of like the parents of these doctors. Like they'll target their neighbors. They go after the donors to the clinics a lot. Like they'll send them pictures of like bullets and knives. One of the things they do often is that they'll just burn down completely the wrong clinic. So there's been a lot of cases where they attack the clinic next to it because they're not. Yeah,
it's mind-boggling the stuff they've gotten away with.
Yeah, and I want to end on this guy named John Brockenhoft, who he bombs 3 abortion clinics over 2 decades. Like he's one of the guys who they sent to prison, and then he came out and they bombed another abortion clinic. And I want to read this quote from him. My orders to Vietnam didn't suddenly materialize unexpectedly. I volunteered to go because I saw the South Vietnamese people were being threatened by a communist takeover, and I figured if they were willing to fight for freedom, they deserved to be free and deserved help too. He goes on to point out, in January of 73, I had just returned from voluntary participation in a bombing campaign in support of the liberty of people 8,000 miles away. So I hope you will believe I would not have turned my back on my own people, American babies. My own people, American babies. If you had asked for my help in bombing an abortionary in this country, even in 73, and especially since it was not mere liberty, but their very lives at stake, I would have gone with you. So this guy's literally saying he's still fighting the Vietnam War, but he's doing it to bomb abortion clinics. And he went to Vietnam because he wanted to kill communists. And this guy was at the Capitol at January 6th.
That sounds about right.
So yeah. We're like the moment we are at now is this sort of detritus of like every crime the U.S. has ever committed is just rolling back, and you know we're seeing all of these people who fought in Vietnam and came back home and like killed a bunch of people who did abortions and did a bunch of bombings, and now they just tried to do a coup. They're probably going to get away with like a legal coup pretty soon because they've now seized control of the court system, and it's like, well, yeah, this is how they did it.
They do a really effective combination of violent direct action and legal challenges. Their actions able to be so successful. One, because like the tactics they choose cause material damage and material change, but also obviously like they're not getting like investigated the same way anyone else would, right? Because like they are capable of doing this effective action because they don't face any similar level of oppression to any other group that would be doing this, especially if they're on the left. So like it's always useful to look at the tactics of your enemy and how they do certain things, but you can always have to realize like this is the same thing with January 6th. If it was a whole bunch of people in Black Bloc storming that, the response from the cops would have been very different initially and continue along throughout the whole day and the subsequent investigations. So always good to look into tactics, but the response from the government's always going to differ depending on who's doing the actual challenging.
Yeah, and I think I say 2 things about this. One, like there are things you can learn from how the right operates. You can't carbon copy their tactics and try to do them from the left because it just won't work, because the structural conditions for the left are just different. But the second thing is also that like it is simultaneously true that the level of repression against leftists is higher than it is against right-wingers, and also that's true, and it's also true that you can do stuff, and like people have, and I mean like, none of the James Revenge people have gotten caught yet, so like, you know,
we will see.
Yeah, I mean, maybe by the time this episode comes out, and that'd be unlikely.
Like, we'll see. Like in general, right?
Yeah.
Especially when movements are decentralized. But yeah, I mean, wow, they sure get to get away with a whole bunch of stuff. You can be doing like pretty public bombing incidents for almost a decade and not get caught. If you can
bomb the Olympics and not get caught for like 7 years.
Yeah,
it's wild.
And I'm also just assuming the vast majority of these guys are white, and so they're non-threatening.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
so it's also that, and also the fact that this didn't happen like a long time ago. It's still happening, and that's crazy that we still don't hear about it. Like
we talked about on this show like a few weeks ago. Like the people lit another abortion clinic on fire. Like that happens still, and will continue to happen, and people continue to not care about it because it doesn't threaten anyone who's in power, and so the media doesn't care.
And it's been happening long enough that there's this sense of like normalization around it. It's not seen as radical. It's seen as, oh, obviously some people think that's justified. It's not surprising. And that normalization allows way more people to both feel capable of doing something, and when it happens, there's not as big of a fuss.
I do think it's also true though. Like I think there are a lot of people, like I think most people don't know that this happened. Like I think there's an extent to which the level of violence has been totally invisibilized.
Sure.
And because I mean the other thing about this again is the reason that they're working like this is because this is a completely minoritarian position, right? Like they don't actually have that many numerical supporters. It's just that they're able to sort of, they have enough people to wage a systemic campaign of terror, and because of that, they're able to inflict their fascism onto the rest of the population.
That's a good ending sigh.
That was a good ending sigh.
Yeah.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom-loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd, and in 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. He became the first bachelor to ever have his final rose rejected. The internet turned on him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
But what happened to Clayton after the show made even bigger headlines. It began as a one-night stand and ended in a courtroom with Clayton at the center of a very strange paternity scandal.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
Police search warrant.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. This is Love Trapped. This season, an epic battle of he said, she said, and the search for accountability in a sea of lies.
I have done nothing except get pregnant by the Bachelor!
Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Unfortunately, some of these recordings haven't got the best sound quality. We were walking around the Butterfly Center. We tried our best to block the wind, but some of it's pretty blown out. We still wanted you to hear them, so we've included them, but apologies that the sound quality isn't what it could be.
There was a time when you could have been forgiven for believing that American fascism had been thoroughly beaten back, marginalized, and damaged beyond the capacity for reconstitution. Only the very foolish and dishonest believe that today. Every time the far right has taken a serious beating in this country, they've had a place to retreat to, a sanctuary to reorganize, recoup, and surge out again towards the halls of power. That sanctuary is the U.S.-Mexico border. There's a song I quite admire by the Drive-By Truckers named after a young Mexican man, Ramon Casiano. In 1931, after the kind of stupid altercation young men have been having since time immemorial, Ramon was murdered by another kid named Harlan Carter. Harlan was convicted of murder and then let off by another judge due to a procedural issue with his case. It hardly needs to be said that Harlan was white. He went on to join the Border Patrol during a period when it was seen as a model of good racial policy by the Nazi government in Germany. Carter rose to lead the Border Patrol, helped to militarize it, and then went on to run the NRA and turn it from a simple gun advocacy organization to the far-right culture war institution it became. Everything we're dealing with today from the far right started at the border, and, to quote from that song, that's still where it is today. But the border is more than just a battleground in America's endless culture war, and it is more than just the system of violence men like Carter helped make it into. The United States' border with Mexico stretches from the Atlantic to the Pacific, through the homelands of many indigenous peoples and across the migratory trails of numerous species. And to many, many people today, it's still just home. Mariana Jones Wright runs a butterfly sanctuary that has, somewhat improbably, provoked the direct ire of a U.S. president and become the center of a series of conspiracy theories. She also grew up along the border in the Rio Grande Valley. In high school, she'd take trips to discotecas and bars in Reynosa, just across the border from McAllen, Texas. Today, she runs the National Butterfly Sanctuary just outside of the nondescript town which seems to have endless strip malls, big box stores, and family-run Mexican food joints. You can go there and see wildflowers, walk in the woods, and if you're lucky, like we were, you might even find a snake and some monarch butterflies making their way across the continent without regard for borders or immigration checks.
So, growing up here, we all led very fluid lives, and I use that word deliberately. I mean, in the 1970s, during the gas crisis, when Carter was president, we would literally drive to Mexico to gas up our cars and then come back. In high school, we would go to Mexico for lunch and cocktails and come back for class or skip class and come back for football games on Friday night. Friday nights, Saturday nights, we were all in Mexico partying our asses off. They had the best discos and clubs, and our parents were over there too having dinner. And I know people who are citizens who live in Mexico because it's more affordable, because they have reliable electricity. I mean, y'all are laughing, but no.
The border, for most people living there, sometimes called fronterizos, is an inconvenience. You have to drive to a certain crossing, sometimes your truck gets checked, sometimes the port of entry is closed and you're late for work. But in the public eye, especially during and after the 2016 presidential campaign, it looms like a scene from Lord of the Rings. And since then, it's also started to look like one.
So, growing up here, I knew there was illegal immigration. it's impossible not to know. I mean, nearly everyone knows someone who came across. They came to visit family on a short-term visit and didn't go back home, or they crossed the river somewhere. But you'll see here, our river is wide and deep and dangerous. It's deadly. I mean, when I was growing up here, and I'm 52, I had friends who lived in Mexico. Their parents had homes and businesses here and there. Some of them rode the bus across the bridge every day for school in the morning. I mean, it was nothing. We never thought of anyone's status, in terms of citizenship or anything else. And also, sort of liminal zone where people like me are up the wazoo. I have two passports to navigate in both countries in which I have citizenship I can move, or they have nothing. And there seems to be hardly any in between.
In mainstream media, the border's presented as dangerous, as are the people crossing it. But it's hard to feel that you're in danger when you're watching the sunset over the Rio Grande and listening to the owls who begin their work after dusk in the ever-diminishing wild places along the river's north bank.
Up until a couple of months ago, we were coming out here 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes twice a day on our boat, and bringing a lot of journalists out. It almost never wound up in their reportage because they never saw it. Right. They were like, yes, take us out on the river. We want to see the illegals crossing. And we're like, dude, the only way to do that is to hook up with the MAGA campaign officials working with the Border Patrol Union.
Some of the most beautiful and fragile landscapes in the country along the southern border. Part of Mariana's work is introducing kids to them. I've been lucky enough to spend time in many of them. Camping in East County, San Diego, where the PCT begins, is one of my favorite things to do. Riding my bike in southern Arizona is an adventure I take at every opportunity. And I'm not the only one. From jaguars to butterflies, many species of wildlife live along the border and pass over it on a daily basis. The border might look serious on a map, but for much of the last century, you'd have struggled to point to it on the ground unless you had a GPS device and far too much free time on your hands.
These kids that'll be here this week, as part of their academic study, they thought the Rio Grande Valley was a desert. They didn't know that, that we had 11 biologically distinct ecosystems in a 4-county region that would fit inside San Diego County, California. That we have the river that's not a trickle when everybody flushes their toilets, like it can be in El Paso. I mean, they had no idea that we're the edge of subtropical, America, the neotropics in America.
Since 9/11, though, the border's become a physical thing. A landscape thriving with life that's somehow found a way to exist in places that can kill you with heat in the day and cold in the night, and sometimes both in 24 hours, has been torn apart to provide people who have never been there with a chance to grandstand about security, and various government contractors a chance to line their pockets. Ted Cruz recently posed in a boat wearing body armor and standing next to a machine gun, just feet away from where we watched recreational boaters sail lazily along the river. As we walked from the center down to the river, we spotted some trash on the ground and went to pick it up. It turned out to be a battery, the kind used in a tactical flashlight or weapon light. Mariana doesn't use those, and it wasn't there last time she walked down the trail. It's not just the wall that's ruining this landscape, she says. It's the constant presence of militarized border patrol, who see the area as a conflict zone, not a conservation one.
As I was saying, they're the ones who leave the trash everywhere.
Used for other stuff as well, but they're very commonly used on the kind of lights you use for guns. And
The little lithium.
CR123s, they're so expensive that you only use them flashlights pretty much.
Mariana knows this only too well. Her butterfly center backs up to the Rio Grande. It's a beautiful, peaceful place, but since 2017, it has been under threat from the relentless militarization of the southern border. The butterflies, she says, are important for a number of reasons.
So butterflies are critical pollinators to all of the green stuff, most of which we don't eat. People know bees pollinate about 1/3 of our food. And so they care about bees now because everyone would hate to lose 1/3 of our food. But butterflies pollinate all of the grasses, wildflowers, shrubs, and trees on the planet, the ones that reduce erosion by holding the ground in place against wind and against rain and floods. The plants that reduce the radiant heat that would come off of the earth if we didn't have the green stuff. They filter the water going into the water table, and they produce oxygen for us. They filter our air. That's why butterflies matter. And that's why everybody should care about them and do what they can in their communities with their endemic native plants to provide habitat for butterflies.
It's not just the butterflies who are in danger, either.
It's disgusting. But it is, I hate to say entirely predictable, but it's fairly predictable in an end-stage capitalist society where we're moving from a military-industrial complex to a border security one, where border walls and border security are the United States' #1 export. And most people don't even know about BORTAC. It's operating worldwide.
I have been shot at by BORTAC many times in Portland.
Yeah, and people don't realize it was the CBP drones that were flying overhead in Minneapolis.
To understand exactly what is at stake, both for the border and the butterflies, it's important to understand exactly what the border wall looks like on the ground. The border wall ecosystem is not just a wall. It's a towering 30-foot steel structure topped with anti-climb plates. Along the barrier, which is often hundreds of yards from the actual border, there's a road wide enough for two of the expensive pickup trucks the CBP drives to pass each other. In remote areas, a road to allow construction vehicles to get to the wall also had to be built. For landscapes that had been untouched for centuries, it's been catastrophic. That's why the National Butterfly Sanctuary fought the border wall. In the summer of 2017, they found contractors on their land using heavy equipment to destroy the plants they had worked so hard to protect.
After we found the contractors here illegally clearing our land with no right of entry, no eminent domain exercise, no waiver of NEPA and other laws, we filed suit against the federal government. That brought some publicity. And with it, a lot of people who said, that if we opposed border wall, we must be for illegal immigration, as though the issue is that simple.
The wall, in addition to being a colossal expense, much of which is funneled to Zeckelman Industries, a Canadian-owned steel company which was fined $975,000 by the FEC for legal donations to the Trump campaign in 2020, is pretty useless.
The border wall is built miles inside the United States, that Border Patrol picks up ladders every day to share photos of ramps built so vehicles could literally drive over border wall, like, the old Range Rover commercials, and also other breaches. We also got a chance to explain to them that up until President Trump, the Border Patrol Union itself had opposed border wall. They had called it a waste of monies, ineffective, and really irrelevant to their mission of preventing illegal entry to the United States.
Walking along the border, we found half a dozen ladders constructed from old wooden pallets. Alongside them were IDs, clothing, and detritus that migrants had either abandoned on their journey north or had thrown out for them by Border Patrol agents who'd apprehended them. Either way, These discarded things told a sad story of young people, sometimes parents and sometimes children with siblings, crossing a river and then a wall to try to get a chance at a better life. What the border wall does do, very effectively, is funnel people through the giant gaps in it. From Texas to California, the Trump administration has rushed to build as much wall as it could in order to live up to the wildly exaggerated claims that Trump made in his 2020 election debates.
We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall.
Of that over 400 miles, 350 odd were repairs to existing barriers or secure fences, as they are technically termed. But the rest was built in places that were easiest to access. In Southern California, mountains and valleys are simply skipped. The wall stretches across the flatlands in between. People are forced to cross in these gaps, in the hardest places, and as a result, many more of them die. The Butterfly Center isn't one of the hard places, but Mariana has found dozens of identity documents, some of them in evidence bags labeled Department of Homeland Security. She says that people aren't dumping them. They are being stripped of their documents when they are detained.
I know that the other side, as was seen in the videos that we came here in Maine at the end of January, they claim that the cartel strips the migrants of their phones and their IDs and stuff, and that's a lie. The cartels allow the migrants to keep phones because phone is how they communicate with family to say, you have to send more money, or, I made it this far. The phone is the bank and the lifeline that not only, aids the immigrant, the cartel. That's the only way they get paid. And the fact that Border Patrol is making people undocumented is something folks in the United States don't understand. They don't see that we find garbage bags full of medical records, birth certificates, marriage licenses, IDs, and other things from migrants that they have brought here with them to prove their identities and their illness or the violence that they've suffered and everything to make their asylum cases. But Border Patrol trashes all of that.
Throughout the 4 years of the Trump presidency, the Butterfly Center fought to protect the ecosystem they had created and to keep the pristine riverbank for barn owls, not Border Patrol trucks. Mariana isn't alone. The South Texas Birding Preserve was forced to back out of a deal with the feds after a community outcry at the thought of the loss of one of the very few wild places in the area. While they have, so far, been able to stop the construction of portions of the border wall, they have not been able to stop the multiple armed agencies that police the border, and often each other, from encroaching on the center's land.
Currently in Texas, there are several overlapping missions to protect the border. Under Operation Lone Star, Texas National Guard soldiers are deployed to protect the border and prevent drug smuggling and child trafficking, at least according to the office of Governor Greg Abbott. Sadly, they're not able to protect themselves from each other. So far, 4 soldiers have died by suicide, 2 in accidental shootings. Texas law allows National Guard soldiers to bring their own personal weapons, which were responsible for both deaths, and 1 drowned trying to save migrants from the river. Because the troops are deployed under state orders, not federal ones, they receive fewer benefits and their families are not compensated as well in the event that they die. In addition to the 10,000 Texas troops, there are also 4,000 National Guard soldiers on federal orders along the border. Task Force Phoenix, as it's called, is a combination of 34 different Guard units stitched together with very little cohesion or prior experience working together, and has been blighted by low morale. Troops in this deployment are 3 times more likely to have a car accident than seize illegal drugs. And a battalion deployed to McAllen had 3 soldiers die, the same number as the rest of the National Guard combined that year. DUI issues are so common that breathalyzers are being issued to units. The crisis isn't at the border. The crisis is the border. It's not only United States soldiers dying along the southern border, it's also migrants. According to the Missing Migrants Project, and its data is admittedly better viewed than it is heard, migrants coming from Central or South America are far more likely to die at the USA's southern border than they are at any other point on the way there. 1,248 people died or went missing last year making the trek north, 595 of them at the border. Given that the border, both under Republicans and Democrats, is a weapon that's increasingly effective at killing people and increasingly present in political debate, it's surprising how many people have never been there. The border, at least the bits of it without the wall, doesn't feel violent. One night while we were in Texas, we sat on the bank of the Rio Grande and looked across the river at the sunset. Behind us was a wall funded by private donations to a group called We Build the Wall. It's built so close to the river that the weight from the Border Patrol boats will see it undermined and washed away in less than 5 years. Across from us, little cabanas and bars studded the shoreline. It looked idyllic, and were it not for the thousands of armed people who make it their job to stop it, it would have been quite nice to swim across for a drink. Swimming over was out of the question. But the peaceful border we encountered was not the one you'd recognize if you've seen Fox News over the past 4 years. For much of Middle America, the border is constructed as a lawless land, somehow also as a desert despite the fact that 1,200 miles of it are marked by a river, and a place where cartel violence goes unchecked, human trafficking runs rampant, and young children are snatched away from their families and sold into sex slavery. Of course, young children are snatched away from their families at the border, but that's your taxpayer money at work, not the Zetas or Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. Sadly, the Butterfly Center's opposition to the wall combined with this political theatre at the border to place a group of people who just wanted to be left alone, to be nice to butterflies, at the center of a culture war they wanted nothing to do with. At some point, the Trump White House became aware that 100 acres of Texas grasslands were holding out against all the legal, and questionably legal, efforts of the Department of Homeland Security and the Trump administration to destroy the little haven along the Rio Grande.
We know that Jared Kushner said in May of 2019 in the Oval Office, we solved the butterfly thing. And Steve Bannon had been, the former special advisor to President Trump, and then he is the one who started this PSYOP. And they took aim at us, and instead of us being against the wall and possibly for open borders, they declared that we were a cartel front and actively engaged in trafficking humans and drugs, that we were not about conservation at all, but we were selling women and children into sex slavery.
Mariana's Twitter bio, at the time of writing, reads, "Do no harm, take no shit." And that's the approach she took as the MAGA community began to sling an increasing amount of shit at her. The North American Butterfly Association filed suit against Brian Kolfage / We Build the Wall, Tommy Fisher / Fisher Sand and Gravel / TRG Construction, and Lance Newhouse / Newhouse and Sons on December 3rd, 2019. Kolfage, a US Air Force veteran, attempted to crowdfund the wall after Congress wouldn't fund it, to the ridiculous extent that Trump desired. He raised over $25 million. In August of 2020, Kolfage was indicted, along with Steve Bannon and 2 other co-defendants, on federal charges of defrauding hundreds of thousands of We Build the Wall donors. Federal prosecutors said that despite repeatedly assuring donors that Kolfage would not be paid, the defendants engaged in a scheme to divert $350,000 to Kolfage, which he used to fund his lavish lifestyle. Kolfage was separately indicted in May of 2021 on federal charges related to his falsification of tax returns. In April of 2022, Kolfage entered a guilty plea, having accounted for about $10 million in spending and a little under 5 miles of actual wall. Kolfage's attempts to build the wall in Texas were hampered by the National Butterfly Center lawyers, who argued that it was a flood risk, because it is, and by various tax issues that Kolfage's team seemed entirely unaware of. While they hoped to transfer the wall they built, which they called the Lamborghini of walls, to federal ownership, CBP wanted nothing to do with it, as they were building their own wall outside of the floodplain. After ignoring a 2019 ruling, Kolfage eventually built about 3 miles of wall in Texas, and then declared the project complete. In November of 2019, with litigation ongoing, Kolfage took to Twitter to accuse the National Butterfly Centre of having a rampant sex trade taking place on your property and the death, bodies.
When we first saw Brian Kolfage's tweets and the We Build the Wall videos using my image and talking about the butterfly lady and everything and the Butterfly Center, at first, you know, we kind of reacted with humor, like, this is too funny. Like, who in their right mind would believe any of this? And, you know, we even tried addressing, I mean, I didn't know who Brian Kolfage was at the time, but, you know, we replied like, you have a very, very active imagination, or you're a really, twisted person. And we used the hashtag liar, liar, pants on fire. Because we really did think it was ridiculous. But any notion that this was not deadly serious was soon dismissed. And now I've become this lightning rod for extremism in American politics, or as I've told others, you know, I've had a lot of journalists ask me, what does it feel like to be at the crossroads of the culture wars in America? And I'm like, I'm not at the crossroads of the culture war. I live in the borderlands, which are the proving grounds for fascism in America. That's where I live. And we're going to see it more and more. Everybody's going to see it more and more. They test things like the aerostat balloons here. And the fact that we didn't cut them loose and shoot them down and set them on fire, the fact that we were like, oh, that's kind of a pretty innocuous, you know, white balloon in the sky, we can live with it, means that now it's gone out from under DHS to DOD and it's being deployed across the United States. Coming soon to a community near you.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveler said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal. Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Echard, and in 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. He became the first Bachelor to ever have his final rose rejected. The internet turned on him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
But what happened to Clayton after the show made even bigger headlines. It began as a one-night stand and ended in a courtroom, with Clayton at the center of a very strange paternity scandal.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
Please search warrant.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. This is Love Trapped. This season, an epic battle of he said, she said, and the search for accountability in a sea of lies.
I have done nothing except get pregnant by the Bachelor!
Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
A few weeks after Colfage's tweet, the Butterfly Centre closed its rusty gate. It reopened in late April of 2022, but the almost 3 months in between were a harrowing experience for Mariana and for the staff. When we arrived at the centre in early March, there was a police surveillance tower posted in the car park, and young men in Humvees on the road we travelled down to get there. Despite them, or perhaps in a sense because of them, and the theatre they represent, Mariana doesn't feel safe. She carries a gun on her property. Even without the wall, the militarization of the border has had a huge impact on the centre. As we walk down to the river, she shows us some of the roads and access routes that have been built.
Concrete goes here in the base of the levee or midway in the levee, and then they backfill the gap to make this road up here wide enough for 2 to 3 vehicles. And then down here, they'll have a high-speed, all-weather road. So we fully expect there's border wall, and then there's border wall system. The road, the lighting, the sensors, those sorts of things are part of the system. And we fully expect they will seize our land, clear and alter this for system. Otherwise, they come down this high-speed, all-weather road, have to slow down, go up, and drive along the canal. And we know the number one killer of Border Patrol agents is motor vehicle accidents.
As we walk along one of the roads, we talk about the impact the wall has had on wildlife. I tell her a story about a deer I saw try to get around the wall into a pond. For whatever reason, it was so desperately sad that I can't forget it. The devastation the border wreaks on human life tends to get the most press, and rightfully so. But Mariana has spent years watching the wall spread like a cancer over the ecosystem she loves.
Pesticides, the addition of herbicide to, keep the enforcement zone dead and free of any vegetation. It has to do with the installation of all-night bright lighting that disrupts mammals. And of course, the wall, when it eliminates range area, when it forms that barrier for land mammals and reptiles, you eliminate genetic diversity from breeding, you eliminate seed distribution, all kinds of other things. So no, there's no way to build a wall like that without messing it all up, especially here where they're building it in the lower Rio Grande Valley Wildlife Conservation Corridor.
Of course, the human cost is even higher. Mariana first became aware of exactly what was at stake when she, like millions of other people, opened up her phone and learned about the most recent in a string of hate crimes inspired by anti-immigrant rhetoric.
A very disturbed young man drove from Plano to the Walmart in El Paso and massacred 22 people and injured dozens others. We were very much aware of that and believe that is ultimately what We Build the Wall seeks to provoke here.
The shooter, who openly targeted Mexicans and believed in the Great Replacement theory, which is common among white nationalists, had posted a manifesto on 8chan before he started his killing spree. In that manifesto, he complained of a Hispanic invasion and used rhetoric that mirrored that of Colfage and his fundraising collaborator, Steve Bannon. 2019 was the year the 8chan shootings dominated news coverage on extremism. I found myself as the world media's go-to guy for explaining what had happened. The hardest thing to get across was how much of the hate that had ended in dozens of murders had started with shitposting, people spreading racist memes and hateful jokes within the confines of a digital echo chamber. For Mariana, the El Paso shooting was a wake-up call, hard evidence that online bullshit can turn into deadly violence. The longer she spent online reading far-right conversations, the more she realized Colfage's baseless allegations might mean real danger for her and her colleagues.
After we filed suit against the Department of Homeland Security, and there was publicity about that, and honestly, the timing of that was kind of good because we filed suit at the beginning of December. So by the time media picked up on it, people were really already distracted by Christmas. Yeah. You know, they were holiday planning and partying and shopping and all that. So there wasn't this enormous explosion of publicity and negative backlash. But we did start getting what we called disaster tourists. People who would show up going, we heard they're going to build the wall across the Butterfly Center. Show us where they're going to build our president's big, beautiful wall. And as long as they behaved, you know, we have maps. We would take their entry fee and say, okay, now you got to walk a quarter mile that way to the canal. That's where they're going to build it. And then walk another 1.2 miles to the border, to the actual border. Right. And again, it gave us a chance to educate people. Yeah. And there was a lot of head scratching with people going, but why would they build the wall?
Things seemed to be going well, but then they took a turn for the worst. Colfage had tweeted that, quote, the only butterflies we saw were swarming a decomposing body surrounded by tons of rotting trash left behind by illegals, and his lies had become something of a fixture on the places where MAGA and QAnon overlap. Almost none of these people had ever visited the border, but years of propaganda had given them a fixed set of expectations about this place. They spun up ever more ridiculous fantasies, and, by late 2019, some of them had even started to show up in person.
About that same time, police arrested 2 young men with Atomwaffen in West Texas, and they had been stopped and pulled over, and they had all kinds of weapons and munitions and grenades and, improvised explosive devices and everything in the car, and they said they were headed to the border. Then the militia people started coming here. And I was here the day the first ones came, the first that we know of, came inside the building to case the joint. And sometimes I sit here at the conference table to work. Sometimes I'm in this office right here. But I can always hear what's going on at the front counter. Yeah. And we have a door chime. And so there are questions that people ask when they're first-time visitors. There are questions people ask when they're part of our tribe, when they're naturalists, when they've come for the butterflies and the birds and all of that. And then there are questions people ask that make all of your spidey senses, go off. Yeah. And I heard that kind of questioning. And whenever that happens, I get my phone open to camera, and I go out there.
What the question you heard was that kind of triggered you a bit?
They were asking about the lay of the land and how they would get to the river from here. And those aren't regular questions. When most people show up, they're like, we're here on family vacation and on our way to South Padre, but we heard there was a butterfly center, so we stopped to, so they may say, like, where are the butterflies? People show up thinking we're a butterfly house, but when people immediately say, like, how do I get to the river from here? Or explain to me where the access points are. And you're kind of like, okay, well, no, that's... Yeah. And I took a picture of them from behind. And then I went out there and I was like, hello, gentlemen, can I help you? And make sure they, it's like, we are looking you in the face. We can identify you. And one of them kind of turned and walked off. And one of them stayed to talk to me. And they were asking, well, we've just, never been here before. And tell us what y'all are all about. And it was the week of Thanksgiving. And we'd actually just had our potluck for staff and some of our members. So they're like, and you've got food. And they're like, can we have some pecan pie? Sure, have a slice of pie. But the other guy who had peeled off, I noticed him walking around. He came and looked back here. He was noticing the cameras and all the places. He made his way toward the back of the building and started the same thing. And I was like, oh, and I told Luciano, go outside, photograph all the vehicles in the parking lot. Get license plates, get all the identifying information that we would need. And sure enough, there were 2 trucks backed in with the Punisher stickers and the 13 stars in a circle and the don't tread on me and this and that. One of them was from New Mexico, and I believe the other one was from, I want to say like Oregon or somewhere, but it was, it was, I've still got all that information. And then so after they left, we downloaded the security camera video and put our photos and everything together. And I emailed everything to the commander for DPS down here, as well as the mission police chief, and then asked to meet with them. And of course, the Mission PD guys had no idea about the Atomwaffen people being arrested in Texas. They had no idea the militia was in town. And then more and more of them kept coming. And, one of them would drive up and down Sherbach in his huge jacked up truck. It was a red truck with the Trump flags, and he had 2 big Great Danes that, and he would just be loud and annoying. He wanted everybody to know he was here on patrol and ready to intimidate. That was disconcerting, but the police responded. They wound up having several interactions with various militia people, and even taking at least 2 of them that we know of into custody. And at least one of those was turned over to the FBI.
The man arrested had outstanding warrants and had been flying a drone in a controlled airspace. Another had been impersonating a law enforcement officer. Seeing the threat, Mariana realized that if she wanted to stay safe, she was going to have to take matters into her own hands.
We don't know if it was done here or somewhere else. I assume it was not here because they didn't tell us it was here.
That you heard of.
Oh, no. The Mission PD officer, who is their liaison with the FBI, came and met with me and thanked me for sharing all of that information. I mean, we knew what hotel they were staying at. We've had to become our own sort of security and detective force because nobody else is doing it. And I think most people in communities around the country think the police know what's going on and they're out there, safeguarding us, when we have learned the hard way that that is absolutely not true.
Soon, she was plumbing the parts of the internet that she'd only heard mentioned on passing in the news.
We were aware of Pizzagate. Yeah, we were aware that they had declared that Hillary Clinton and associates were running a satanic child, sex ring with, ritual sacrifice and all kinds of other preposterous stuff out of the basement of a DC pizza parlor, where the pizza parlor didn't even have a basement, much less a satanic ritual child sex trafficking ring.
Just a few weeks after the shooting in El Paso, We Build the Wall broke ground on their Phase 2 project. Within sight, and very much within shooting distance of the National Butterfly Center. Mariana was under no illusion about the stakes.
They know that they have the ability to incite violence in that way, to motivate people to take action, and they use a lot of really inflammatory rhetoric. Even Steve Bannon's broadcast is called The War Room. You know, we're all at war. We're at war against the cartels, and we're at war for the soul of our nation, and we're at war against the Democrats, and you know, and now they're at war against the Butterfly Center.
In addition to her intelligence gathering, she started taking steps to protect herself and her workers. They weren't exactly the sort of things she'd expected when she took a job where she'd hoped to write grants and talk to kids about butterflies.
We had to develop some very rudimentary safety plans, like if there were a shooting, where you would shelter, how we would try to safeguard visitors, and other things to like the women on staff, even the guys on staff. Like I never have my hair down. I always keep it up or under a hat or something, because you just learn in basic self-defense that somebody's going to grab your ponytail or your hair as the fastest, easiest way to take control of your whole body, basically. So we all take a variety of precautions, and it has radically changed the way we operate here and the way we perceive this place, which used to be, I mean, we were blissful idiots coming to work in this oasis of flowers and butterflies every day. And, you know, my children described me as Snow White, that I'm out there just, with the, you know, the butterflies landing on me and the hummingbirds coming up and saying hello.
Luckily, she wasn't alone. As soon as people heard about the threats to her in the center, she began to receive messages of support. It turns out it's not only right-wing grifters who can summon people to a remote part of southern Texas where the Rio Grande twists through the reeds, and locals switch to English and Spanish as the mood suits them. Groups from across the country, from veterans to indigenous nations, reached out to offer support.
So first we had the water protectors and indigenous peoples like the Carrizo, Come Crudo, and Navajo and other nations. People came here and set up camp. They were good being here night and day to be our eyes and ears and a deterrent for the militia entering the property. And along with them came others like the Sierra Club Military Outdoors Program participants who also camped out here for a week. And we had the Brown Berets and Veterans for Peace, and even folks from the Socialist Party and the Communist Party. I mean, I hate to even include that since we get called pinko, commie, libtards, snowflakes, and all of that. But those folks showed up willing to help in the face of fascism, in the face of these militia.
But all this stress and the need for constant patrols and vigilance took its toll. Even with support, being the center of a fabricated firestorm of lies is no fun. It wasn't just Mariana who was impacted. The constant stress and the non-stop overflights of the Border Patrol helicopters impacted her staff as well.
And then in 2019, like, all bets are off. Anybody can say anything they want. They can, you know, I hate to say it, but people get mental health days now if they just for whatever reason are like, I can't deal with this shit today. They don't have to come to work. And I've lost good employees.
In 2020, briefly, We Built the Wall won an injunction and kept building their privately funded wall. Massive erosion quickly undermined it, but the International Boundary and Water Commission report on the construction wasn't completed until March, by which time We Build the Wall had completed 3 miles of wall. The consensus among hydrologists and engineers interviewed by ProPublica for a report on the wall said that the Rio Grande had scoured against the base of the wall, causing erosion and putting the wall in danger of collapse. With its very shallow foundation, Cofage's wall was in immediate danger of toppling into the river. In response to this, Trump did what Trump does and took to Twitter to blame everyone else. In July of 2020, he tweeted, "I disagreed with doing this very small, tiny section of the wall," going on to say, "It was only done to make me look bad, and perhaps it now doesn't even work. Should have been built like rest of wall, 500 plus miles." I should also note that he misspelled perhaps in that tweet. While Cofage was still reeling from this condemnation, the acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York announced indictments of Cofage and Bannon for wire fraud. The charging documents themselves are an unusually compelling read. We did a couple of episodes of Behind the Bastards covering them. The whole situation would be much funnier, though, if it weren't for all of the lives that Cofage and his cronies directly threatened. Anyway, it turned out they had been taking huge sums for their own personal use while concealing their use of funds that donors thought would be spent on the wall by creating, quote, sham invoices and accounts to launder donations and cover up their crimes. Initially, all 4 entered not guilty pleas. They seemed to be buying time, hoping that Trump would pardon them. In the end, he did pardon Steve Bannon, and you can make of that what you will, but the others were left to hang in the wind. This April, Cofage entered a guilty plea to these and other charges. The failure of Bannon and Cofage's grift didn't stop them from using the Butterfly Sanctuary as a punching bag in their fundraising rants that they published to whatever sites had not gotten around to banning them yet. As right-wing radicals were deplatformed from Facebook and Twitter in the lead-up to the 2020 election, Mariana stopped getting tagged in their rants, but they didn't stop ranting. Soon, as it became clear that Trump had lost the election and refused to concede it, he began to lie about the election and then attempted to overturn it by encouraging his supporters to storm the U.S. Capitol. At this point, it became clearer that the same people who were fanatical about building the wall had also become entirely detached from reality. Even after Biden had been inaugurated and their lie had failed, a who's who, or perhaps a who's not in jail for sedition yet, of MAGA grifters continued to focus their rage at the QAnon-adjacent fantasies they'd concocted about unspecified cartels smuggling children across a butterfly sanctuary to sexually abuse them. Sometimes, they claimed, they cut the heads off of children so that the corpses were easier to transport. It's the kind of habitual, unhinged escalation that liberals and lefties on Twitter love to consume, mockingly, via aggregator accounts that enable mass gawking at the far right. But for Mariana, it was not at all amusing.
Like, I didn't even know Rumble existed. I didn't know what Rumble was. And then we were sent the video that Christy Hutcherson and Lindsay something from South Carolina made here in front of the Butterfly Center. And you know, of course, there's the Ben Bergquam stuff, and, you know, we don't watch War Room, but sometimes I do have to go find and film portions of those broadcasts where Steve Bannon is still bashing us and using that platform to bolster the lies and you know, really stir up the terrible sentiment and ultimately, we fear the stochastic terrorism.
Let's stop for a second and go into more detail about the people she's referencing here. Christy Hutcherson founded a group called Women Fighting for America. On their website's About page, they note, "Today, Americans' closely held beliefs and freedoms seem to be under constant attack from mainstream media, elitist academia, judicial activists, foreign aggressors, and many times elected politicians. These attacks highlight the 2 extremely different ideologies fighting for our country's future. Will we stand by and let America become a socialist, Marxist, or communist nation and give our children up to this hopeless vision?" I should also note that Women Fighting for America actively solicits donations, which they note are not tax deductible. Hutcherson incited rioters during the January 6th insurrection and is generally what you might call a B-list MAGA star. Ben Bergquam is a correspondent for Real America Voice, the network that hosts Steve Bannon's War Room podcasts. In general, the folks most focused on harassing the butterfly sanctuary are a lower grade of MAGA influencer than the major national names. But they all have connections higher up to those big names, and when they do land a successful line of propaganda, it tends to filter up quite efficiently to those bigger names. In January of 2022, a year after the failed coup at the Capitol, some of these MAGA holdouts came to the Rio Grande Valley to pick on a target they thought they might have a better chance of taking. The We Stand America border security rally was headlined by the few remaining QAnon conspiracy theorists and supporters of former President Trump who had not gotten in trouble for the Capitol stuff. In part, like the entire phenomenon, the conference was a giant grift. But for many of the people taken up with its religious proclamations and wild lies of child trafficking and sexual abuse, it was the last chance they felt they had to stop something evil. Mariana, up until that time, hadn't been aware of how serious the threats against her sanctuary were. Then a friend involved in local Republican politics reached out and told her, "Be armed at all times or out of town." Ahead of the rally, Ben Bergquam appeared in a video on Getter outside of the sanctuary, holding a pair of children's shoes, which he claimed were evidence of trafficking, and stated that he and the Butterfly Center were calling on Joe Biden to shut down the border.
We're down here. We're actually heading down to Benson State Park to look at the end of the wall where Joe Biden stopped building the wall. And this place, the Butterfly Center, they said they were afraid. They had some credible threats that something was going to go on. So we came down here and we want to join our voices with the Butterfly Center and say we stand against the credible threats of the cartels trafficking children through the Butterfly Center. And we call on Joe Biden to close this border down to protect the butterflies, because we all care about butterflies. I mean, you know, the children that are being sold, these shoes were from one of the children that was trafficked across. This wristband was from one of the children that was trafficked across, smaller than my 4-year-old daughter's arm. But what really matters to the Democrats are the butterflies. And so we unite with them. If that's what it's going to take to shut this border down, we unite with them and say, protect the butterflies, Joe. Close down the border. Because we know you don't care about the kids.
The same day, Piper Loomis and Hutchinson appeared in their own video, holding the same suspiciously new-looking children's shoes. In their horrifically overexposed video, they suggested that NBC was, quote, more concerned about butterflies than the little children, and that the Butterfly Center was used as a route for the sex trafficking of children. Together, the video's title said, they would save America.
Hey everyone, this is Lindsay Piper Loomis. I'm here with my bestie, Christy Hutcherson, and founder of Women Fighting for America. I went to the border with her last year for 6 days. We are here at the Butterfly Center. Look at the credible threat. They said there's going to be a big protest here. There's no protest. They're protesting what? Tell them about this.
Butterflies.
What? Tell them why. Like, what was the big deal?
I'm not really sure, but I got news. I've been hit by every single tabloid there is that there's some kind of credible threat with butterflies here in Mission, Texas, from We Stand America and Women Fighting for America. I can tell you, Women Fighting for America loves butterflies, and we care about butterflies very much. So I wanted to come down here and see what the credible threat was. And if we have to protect the butterflies, we need to protect the butterflies. I agree with that. So Biden, why don't you build the wall to protect the butterflies?
Yeah.
It's really that simple. But my question to this administration and to the National Butterfly Museum here, why are you more concerned? Why are you more concerned about butterflies than you are than the little children who are being trafficked right behind this center? And they use the butterfly land to come up through and bring these children who are trafficked and these women who are trafficked. You know, Tom Homan yesterday was speaking on stage and was telling one of the stories where he's seen a little child where he had to rescue, and that one child had over 22 different people's DNA inside of them. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
So as much as I care about butterflies, I can tell you this, Lindsay, I care a lot more about our children and the children who are coming up and being exploited from the different countries by the cartels. Yeah, that's what I care about.
So I've been telling you guys about how children are tattooed according to how they're going to be trafficked or sold, into what type of trafficking, organ harvesting, sex, drug, and human trafficking, how they use their body. They kill them. They use their body cavities to haul drugs across the border until the bodies start decaying. They find the bodies decapitated. Told you about the rape trees, but here we actually have a shoe from, and this is
This is what, so Lindsay, this is a little bracelet, and there's a little how much money it costs for this person to be brought aside to America from the cartels. The other thing is that the cartels, when they're getting ready to move children, they call them tickets. So they have no regard for life. They don't care. They'll throw them in the river. They'll leave them in the desert to die. And they call them tickets. That's how disgusting this whole thing is. And America needs to wake up and understand we are at a war with the cartels. We are at a war to save our children. So
and
thank you so much.
Yeah, and every state's a border state, and South Carolina is ranked one of the top in the nation for trafficking. Lindsay Piper Loomis with Christy Hutcherson. Together, we're saving America. God bless.
But this time, they didn't stop with posting.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveler said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom-loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Echard, and in 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. He became the first bachelor to ever have his final rose rejected. The internet turned on him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
But what happened to Clayton after the show made even bigger headlines. It began as a one-night stand and ended in a courtroom, with Clayton at the center of a very strange paternity scandal.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
Police search warrant.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. This is Love Trapped. This season, an epic battle of he said, she said, and the search for accountability in a sea of lies.
I have done nothing except get pregnant by the Bachelor!
Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
On the day he was inaugurated, Biden signed an executive order rescinding Trump's emergency declaration at the southern border and ending some use of the DoD funding Trump had relied upon as an end run around accountability. But he didn't, as he promised he would, stop building immediately.
During the Biden-Obama administration, Trump campaigned on build that wall. Are you willing to tear that wall down?
No, there will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration, number one.
Like so much else, Biden didn't live up to his promises on the border. There have been some small victories for basic decency, but Biden's record is deeply mixed. He's reunited hundreds of children with their families, but ended court negotiations about a financial settlement for them. Migrant apprehensions climbed to 1.7 million, a record in fiscal year 2021. But they also reflected an unusually high rate of adults attempting to cross the border multiple times. That's because Biden's administration defended Trump's use of Title 42, part of a 77-year-old law called the Public Health Service Act, which has been interpreted to allow CBP to release migrants back into Mexico without booking them. Often, this means they turn right back around and cross again, in a more remote and often more deadly place. Biden hasn't lived up to his promises on the wall either. Mariana showed us a pile of wall sections, essentially giant metal poles just a little shorter than the Trump wall. You could be forgiven for thinking they were identical, but these, she explained, were not technically wall.
And you see the border wall that was being constructed there. Some of it has the tall bollards with the anti-climb plate. That's Trump. Yeah. And then the short bollards are Biden. Yeah. Because Biden is calling this levee repair and guardrail.
Well, I snapped moody black and white photos of the wall from on top of a levee, as I have all along the hundreds of miles of landscape that it cuts through like an open wound. Robert went down to see who made these new pieces of the Biden barrier, but we didn't have much luck finding a label.
The wall segments lay out in giant pallets, surrounded by construction debris and dirt. Every pallet is labeled, and so are all the shipping containers, but the wall materials themselves had no clear maker's mark on them. As we walked back along the dirt road, we asked Mariana about the video that brought us here in the first place. If you haven't seen it, it's a video of Kimberly Lowe, a long-odds MAGA congressional candidate from Virginia. Kimberly is an interesting figure. She started out as a Sanders backer in 2016 and has radicalized since to such a degree that most of her local MAGA people want nothing to do with her. Some of them think she's some kind of double agent. Audio from the incident makes it clear why people might view Kimberly as unhinged.
We're not here to cause any problems, I'm sorry.
No, you are here to promote your agenda, and your agenda is not welcome here.
Okay, thank you so much.
So
You're not for keeping the illegals out? So you're not for
That
helping
has-
all these poor people in the humanitarian crisis?
That's what we're here for.
So that's
you're
our
okay with
agenda.
children
No,
being
that's
sex
not-
trafficked and raped and murdered. That is not
That's
at
your
all
call.
what this is about. We have Girl Scouts spend the night here. That's how safe it is.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I have children in the car. I
Yeah.
hope it's safe here. Yeah. Anyway, we're not here to offend
No, you're
you.
here to make a show and to promote your agenda. So you can leave now.
Thank you for leaving now. Thank you so much. But I'm sorry that you're okay with children being raped.
No,
and
I'm not
murdered
okay
and
with
killed.
any of that.
That's
And
fine, thank you.
your bullshit is a big problem.
It's okay. I'm going to go help the world while you're a really nasty person.
We'll let Mariana explain what happened.
So I was sitting here actually at the conference table, and my son was at the front counter. He doesn't work here, but he was covering for a staff member who was out sick. And as I was saying, you hear things that are like, you know? Yeah. So I was on a conference call. I had my headphones in, but my son came over and he gave me a note, and it said, this woman says she's running for Congress and has her Secret Service agent with her. And, I thought that was strange, but then I'm still on this call, but I took my headphones out so I could hear them. And the one woman, Michelle, was claiming to be Secret Service. And I mean, I've had people like Beto O'Rourke when he was a congressman come visit. Michelle Beckley, who's a state representative. I mean, I've had people come visit, and they don't have Secret Service, you know? So I knew that that was not true, that this woman was not Secret Service. And the congressional rep, I asked my son get her name, and he did. And I just did, you know, literally like 1 or 2 minute internet search for her. And it was immediately apparent that she was a MAGA candidate. And my son said, they want us to open the back 70 for them, but they don't want to pay admission. And on her Facebook page, I could see their Facebook live stream from just like 5 minutes earlier where they had driven down Sherbach to the gate where y'all have been and seen, you know, we have a great big private property, no trespassing sign. And then they went up on the levee and interacted with the Texas National Guard there. Her video ended before that, but a reporter with Stars and Stripes, I know, was on the levee with the National Guard and interacted with Kimberly and Michelle. So they trespassed onto our property. Then they came here demanding that they be granted access without paying admission and declared just right up front, we want to go see the river and the illegals crossing on the rafts to the Butterfly Center.
The rafts they were talking about were referencing a doctored image circulating around the right-wing conspiracy web. We stood at the dock in the image on that afternoon. There were no rafts. Mariana decided to try and talk the two women down.
So, you know, I put my phone on record, carried it out there. I got 2 business cards because it is my job to be professional and greet these people when they come. So I went out there and I said, hello. And the rest of it is history, as they say. You have that audio or, you know, of me saying, I know who you are and what you're up to. And I knew then it was a setup.
Yeah.
For someone to come here and say those things and be doing their own, you know, sort of Project Veritas, Facebook live stream, border adventure from Virginia, as they say, none of it smelled right, you know?
That didn't work, so she asked them to leave.
Well, it was when I told them they needed to leave, and if they weren't going to leave, you know, we would call the police. And I told them, I gestured to my son, just do it, you know, go ahead and call the police, which he did. And they were like, no, we're leaving. They went out the front doors, but then they stopped. So I opened the door behind them like, keep it moving, ladies, you know, you have to leave. And I was focused on Michelle, who was on my left, who was again saying she was Secret Service and laughing at her when I turned and Kimberly was on this side of me and had her phone up like this. So I didn't know if she was taking photos or filming. But we talk about how everybody now has their own triggers. I do not want my photo taken. I do not want anyone filming me. I don't want any of that because of how Colfage and Bannon and their fake news outlets and everything else have used my image and have put a target on my back. So she's standing there going, we're here at the Butterfly Sanctuary or whatever she called it, and I'm with this not nice lady. And I was like, oh no. And I just put my hand up to block her from photographing or filming me or to swat it away. And then I immediately turned back toward the doors to retreat inside the building, but I didn't make it inside the building. I was flat on my ass on the ground. And I didn't know if Michelle had grabbed me from behind or if Kimberly had pushed me or whatever. But then my son busted out of the building and was sort of over me. And I'm trying to get up off the ground. And all this is caught on the video camera from the building.
In a previous video, the women had indicated that they were armed, which is generally a safe assumption when MAGA types show up accusing you of child trafficking. The situation was rapidly growing more dangerous.
My son feared for my life. He thought Michelle was going to stomp my face or my neck or my head. And she's a big girl. And at that point, Kimberly ran to her car. Somewhere in the midst of all that, she fled to her car where she had her 3 children waiting. Because this place is so dangerous and lawless and everything, she brought her 3 children here for her opportunity to, interact with cartel or whatever. I mean, it's just the whole thing just gets more bizarre. And Michelle at that point had taken my phone. And I was just telling her, you're not leaving with my phone, give me my phone back. While Kimberly is again live streaming from her car, yelling at Michelle to come get in the car. Michelle did walk to the car, declare, she's not bothering me about me. But my son had run to close the front gate because he didn't want them. I mean, he had just called 911. Unbeknownst to us, there was a visitor in the parking lot who had also dialed 911. And you guys have been here. There's police on the corner. There's police right there. I mean, there's police everywhere. So my son ran to close the gate. 1, so they couldn't leave with my phone. 2, so they would be here when the police got here. But then the police didn't come. And as she fled the property, she's filming herself. And she's gunning the car, as she races towards the gate, screaming, get the fuck out of my way, get the fuck out of my way. And then she swerves like this at my son, who had to leap to the ground out of the way to avoid being hit by her red Range Rover.
The center was full of visitors. Some of them called 911, but no one stepped in to help.
Prior to this experience, yes, I would have expected our visitors, any decent human being, to respond to a woman screaming, help, help, help me, please, please help. Mm-hmm. But nobody did. Only my son.
At first, they didn't fully grasp what was happening, but soon Mariana had worked out who her attacker was.
And so I relayed all of that to my boss and to the police. And, my boss was kind of like, well, do whatever you want. If you feel like you need to close next weekend, then close next weekend. So we did. We closed that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then we came back in the next Monday. And that's when we saw and people started sending us the videos that Berkwam and Hutcherson had filmed here, presumably on Sunday. And there's probably a lot more stuff out there that we haven't seen.
After leaving the Butterfly Center one day, we went for a walk towards some nearby trailer parks. They're full of people who the locals call winter Texans. People from the colder parts of the US who spend a few months in trailer homes on the border so they can wear shorts in March and not pay expensive heating bills. We bumped into some winter Texans who were on their way to a bird sanctuary we just visited. They said they'd missed their usual trips to the Butterfly Center. Their friends in Minnesota, they said, couldn't believe that they would go down to the border.
That's good, because boy, the stuff you get in Minnesota is not reality as to what's going on the border down here.
In what way?
People don't understand.
First of all, they wonder why are you coming down and putting yourself in such danger. Really, the idea is there's just hordes of people attacking you. It's like the people coming out of Ukraine right now. I mean, that's the impression they get. And we say, we go down to Mexico. You do what? You go into Mexico? Yeah.
They do their best to help change perceptions, they said.
And then we try to do as much as we can to get factual information back home to people with questions and stuff like that. We worked we haven't come the last 2 years because of COVID, but 4 or 5 years ago we were working with the respite center here with Catholic Charities. When there were so many, they were allowing people to come over. The other thing at home is I don't think that people realize, because of the river, there's not a straight line border.
It's not like
that you can't just build a wall straight across, and that people live in their houses south of the wall.
Yeah.
You know, and people's farms are south of the wall.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a wall and sometimes there isn't a wall.
Yeah.
Everywhere we go along the border, we see division. Locals are losing places they love, and people from a long way away are performing a charade for personal and political gain. But it's not all that cut and dried. One taco shop we walked past has a special parking spot reserved for DHS employees. A trailer park we drive by has thin blue line flags flying. Despite my best attempts at pulling the clueless foreigner card when we call them, they won't tell me why they have the flags or what they mean. Some of the National Guard troops we spoke to had been out of work before they came down to the border.
Actually, I didn't have a job before this. So
okay.
It gave me a good opportunity, and I'm planning to stay here like probably the next 2 years.
Okay. Wow, yeah. Do you get active duty pay while you're...
Somewhat, but it's like, it's different because it's state orders, so it's not federal.
Yeah, okay.
Everyone on the border wants to feel safe, including Mariana. But the reason the border is remarkable at all is because so many people have to cross it. Some cross for work, some cross for fun, some cross to change their lives. But without people, the border doesn't have any significance. For Mariana, without people, she can't even enjoy the quiet calm in the sanctuary. She hopes, she says, they can reopen soon.
I mean, honestly, I hope it doesn't last a whole lot longer because we all miss one another. We miss being here, really of all the jobs that a person can have in the world, one where you get to interact with wildlife and garden and breathe fresh air and, feel the rain on your face. I mean, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And interact with people who are absolutely thrilled and fascinated, especially the children, just delighted, gleeful about their interactions here. We want to get back to that, but we have to have more. We have to have more help before we can do that. We need professional guidance beyond what we've received 3 years ago when the first wave of community defense and mutual aid hit the ground here.
Mariana doesn't know when she'll feel safe. But even with the center poised to reopen, as we write this, she isn't secure yet.
I feel like it's a cat and mouse thing. And they're the cat and we're the mouse. And that they are going to continue to come back again and again until something really bad happens. I think it's almost a challenge, maybe at this point, from what I can tell about their psyche.
Mm-hmm.
It goes right back to that winning.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon's no loser. He's not used to losing. And anything short of achieving his goal, whatever that may be, is not winning.
If you've made it this far, you're probably wondering what you can do to help. If, like most Americans, you live a long way from the southern border and have never visited, it might seem strange to take up and travel there, to meet a nice lady and talk about butterflies, QAnon, while you have to drive past soldiers in fatigues with assault rifles to look at her pollinator garden. But Mariana says that even the small acts of solidarity make a huge difference.
Even people just sending really nice email or letters is so good. We'll probably have a wall of that when we get back. Because the flip side of that is the hate mail, the ugly messages, the death threats, the voicemails that are so horrible. So to hear from people that do support us and stand with us and feel like what's happening is horrible, people who write to say, I told my quilting circle about what's happening at the Butterfly Center, or, and we're going to make a quilt for you, or, whatever it is, it helps. It really does. And then they can share our story, because it's not just about the Butterfly Center. It's about what's happening to our democracy. It's about how these operations work to to manipulate people with lies. I don't want to call it conspiracy theories or misinformation or any of that anymore. They're just lies. And people need to start to understand that, whether it's about COVID or the trucker convoys or trans kids or the Butterfly Center.
Hey, we'll be back Monday with more episodes every week from now until the heat death of the universe.
It Could Happen Here is a production of Cool Zone Media. For more podcasts from Cool Zone Media, visit our website, coolzonemedia.com, or check us out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find sources for It Could Happen Here updated monthly at coolzonemedia.com/sources. Thanks for listening.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit. The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Echard. In 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
But here's the thing. Bachelor fans hated him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
That's when his life took a disturbing turn. A one-night stand would end in a courtroom.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.